Good evening, everyone. It is 6:30, and I will call our work session to order. And our work sessions are informal. What I'm going to do is to go around the table so the people at the table introduce themselves, and then I'll go out into the audience. And then we'll start with the first item on our agenda. I'm Elizabeth Couts. I'm the mayor.
I'm Kara Schultz, City Council member.
Dan Keeley, City Council.
Heather Johnston, City Manager.
Regina Dean, City Planner.
Jenny Faulkner, Community Development Director.
Steve Albrecht, Public Works Director.
Bill Coughlin, City Council.
Dan Gustafson, City Council.
Michelle Collins, City Clerk.
John Gessner, Sun This Week.
Tamara Freeze, Stonebridge Communities.
Link Wilson, Cost Wilson Architects.
Joe McElwain, Chase Real Estate.
Andy Chase, Chase Real Estate.
Heather Power, UTC Aerospace.
Earl Farrell, CG Holdings.
Very good.
Jim Bradrick, Planning Commission.
Sue Bast, Environmental Specialist.
Skip Nienhaus, Economic Development.
Welcome, everyone. The first item on our agenda is the special events in the right-of-way. And Regina and Steve, I think you both have the deck this evening.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Tonight, we do have topic special events in the city right-of-way. And this was first brought to you in the fall. New members of the council, this item was brought to a work session just a few months ago as a result of a business requesting to close down part of the roadway to hold a special event and sales. And so because the city, we looked at our ordinances to see if we had anything that would apply. And the most closely related item that would apply would be block party events, which really didn't make sense because that's typically reserved for single-family residential type streets. And we noticed that we really don't have anything that applies to sales. And so brought that forward to council to get direction to see if this is something that we should explore further or include in possible ordinance or policy changes. Fast forward to that meeting date, council had additional questions and wanted staff to do additional research before making a decision on next steps or final direction or further direction. Those questions we'll explore further on the following slides. So current right-of-way practices, we currently allow residential block parties, and we do have a permit that someone could fill out. However, we don't have an ordinance or policy that specifically addresses this or helps streamline that process. So staff hopes to keep doing what we're doing, but just formalize that in a policy and potential ordinance adjustments. We currently allow food trucks or mobile food vending within city right-of-way. We don't propose to make any changes to this. We hope to keep this as is. Especially events in right-of-way. This could be viewed as maybe a staff or employee appreciation event within city right-of-way, or perhaps even a 5K or parade. We don't have anything that necessarily addresses that, so we want to potentially have you discuss that further, explore that further. And then sales within the right-of-way. We currently have been using either a block party or obstruction permit to address this, but is that the right mechanism, and do we need to either amend our ordinance or maybe not pursue this potential ordinance change? As far as research, we did reach out to the 11 market cities. I believe 7 of them responded. That information's in your packet in detail. But just in general, all cities that we received response from do allow block parties or residential block parties with the permit approval from Public Works and or the police department. Road closures for things like appreciation events or 5Ks and art fairs. It was kind of a mixed bag. Some of them allowed, some of them did not allow, and then others required council approval in order for those actions to occur. Sales in the right-of-way. The cities that we surveyed and that did respond did not allow specific sales explicitly in their ordinances or codes. The response from staff was it was not allowed. Sales on private property, all cities allowed sales within private properties would be temporary sales for a business, for example. Public input was one of the things that council wanted us to complete, to reach out to the businesses that we have been approached from in the past. And those three businesses that we have been approached by were Walzer, UTC, and Toyota. And I do know that we do have a representative from UTC in the audience. I don't think anybody else is here, but we did receive feedback from Walzer. They certainly would be in favor of an ordinance that allowed sales within right-of-way or events within right-of-way. But if they weren't necessarily, the changes wouldn't be critical to their operation. So if council said we're not in favor of this, their position right now would be it's okay. As far as sales within the right-of-way, they were in favor if this were to occur on streets where traffic counts were low, and if the property, it didn't impact other businesses. UTC, they don't have sales per se as part of their business operations. However, they do request to close down the street for a special event. Rose Park is right across the street from their location, and they use the park for wellness events, for soccer, for different activities. And so they have 1,600 employees. And so when they have these types of events, they want a safe venue, or safety is high priority for them, and of concern for their employees. Toyota, we did reach out to them. They did receive a copy of the report. To date, we have not received any comment. So we do have the following questions for council to consider, and staff would like further direction. The first question, does the council want to allow commercial sales within the right-of-way? And if so, do you want to perhaps limit that to a certain street classification? For example, maybe on a local road, but not on a arterial or collector road. And I don't know if you want me to go through one by one, or.
We're going to, I think, take it one by one so that we can discuss it. But I do want to also acknowledge UTC and Heather. Thank you so much, because everyone needs to know that Rose Park belongs to UTC, and they allow us, the city, to use it for our soccer activities and so forth. And Heather, you have been doing this wellness activity for about, please come to the table. Yeah, sit next to Regina. How many years? Because I remember back in the early 2000s is when you all started the wellness program, because it was a big kickoff, was a partnership and leveraging the activities that we were doing with Healthy Communities, and the city was a part of that, the school district, the chamber, the hospital, and many of our businesses. So, and you've continued to do that. So how many years?
No, I have to apologize. I don't know the exact number of years, but if I know for sure they've done it for at least 5 years. So
Yeah.
before we became UTC Aerospace, we have been doing those events.
Yes. And have you used it in terms of street closures?
Yes.
Okay.
So
And Steve, have we had any complaints from anyone? Because it's a very short street, and people can go straight up Judicial and access South Cross without having to go through that little.
And actually, Judicial is the road that bends through Rose Park, so it does a funky turn there, but,
Yeah. Okay, but what's the street that goes straight up?
I forget what street that
And
is,
as
it
a
changes
tur-
into, but Judicial bends to the north of UTC and then comes around the east side of UTC. So it is Judicial that's closed. I think the issue with this road isn't that we've had issues there. Our current policy doesn't cover what UTC's, we use the block party permit, and the block party permit was designed for neighborhood cul-de-sac type block parties. This is a larger event. That roadway has, under the block party permit, that roadway wouldn't qualify under the current policy. So we want to adjust the policy, noting that businesses do have these types of events, and when we work with PD, it can create a safe environment and with proper traffic control. So that's one of the adjustments that would need to be made, regardless of how we proceeded, if we, in order to allow UTC to continue to do that event at that location.
Bill?
Just for the benefit of new council members, when this came up before, some of the issues that we talked about is, number one, if we did create a special commercial situation, part of the concern was, well, how do you, if Johnny the butcher wants to have a block party between Rose Park and, and UTC, how do you coordinate which commercial entities can use that street or can't use that street? And it was same true for Walzer on both sides, same true for Toyota. So that then if we start, part of the concern was if we give, we say that business that owns something across the street can do it, and only them, then we're excluding any and every other business. So those were some of the concerns we had, how, then it would be very limited, that the business would have to own both sides of the street, and then how would other businesses view that? Because otherwise, if you have a general commercial one, then any commercial entity could choose to be part of the, go for that block for whatever time period. It just wouldn't be UTC, it wouldn't be Walzer, it wouldn't be Toyota, it would be any business in Burnsville could apply, or any other business could apply. And that's some of the concerns or discussion we had that night when this first came up, and I don't see that any of this has been, I don't see any more thinking along those ways.
Steve?
That's kind of a next step, council member.
Yeah.
So if the council were to be in favor of that, we would have to address the ordinance on whether they have to be adjacent. Those are the types of things that will be
Yes.
fleshed out depending on
Yes.
which direction the council wants to go with these. Because right now, as Councilmember Coughlin said, it's not a loophole, but the block party is meant to allow the closure of essentially a residential block. Doesn't require adjacency of property. So now when we translate that to a business, you could have a business holding an event in front of another business if we don't have some rules that pertain to that. And so I think that is that will be a very important thing to identify. Also, we have sales events here that we've noted. This is a health fair. It's a different, it is truly an employee celebration type event.
Yeah.
So it's a little different in nature too than the sales events.
Yeah.
So much different, I guess.
And so these are some of the things, and thank you for taking the time to outline what that background is. But the thing that we need to take a look at, which I appreciate the work staff has done, because it looked at the Walzer, because the impetus was because of the Walzer sale. And Walzer owns both properties on that short little street. And so, the thing is, was there an impediment between any other businesses? Could customers not access the other businesses? Well, I don't think so. And the same thing with UTC, because Northern Hydraulics is just up the street from you, but it's not going to impede any business. There are no other businesses on Judicial on that bend. So I think these are some of the critical pieces that we need to take a look at. And how has it been working? Has it really impeded other businesses or people from functioning or accessing business, or clients or customers to access their business? So the first question that is before us, does the council want to allow commercial sales events in the public right-of-way? Then, to Steve's point, if we say that's an okay thing, then how do we limit it? How do we limit it and make sure that everybody understands? So, council, what are your thoughts? Bill?
I'd be willing to look at it at the next step, but just to see to how many businesses would that apply to or not apply to with what we've talked about, the owning
The
both sides of the
adjacencies
property. I
and-
mean, if it only affects 3 businesses in Burnsville or something, then, and then we think that that's reasonable, then we can look at it. But I don't know the answer to that. I don't know.
Yeah.
how
But I
many
think that's the
businesses.
thing, it's the next level
Right, but
of
I-
research that staff will
Yeah.
do. Dan?
I agree with Councilmember Coughlin. I think we should look at that. I can almost see a street where 4 or 5 merchants might get together that have that street, and they do a joint venture out there and do some things, which would be, kind of falls in line with things I've seen in some of our surveys about more type of events happening in the city. And I know commercial's commercial, but it still can be an event at the same time, which just can be kind of interesting for the public. And so I would like to look at that. And again, one of the big things I would be concerned about is that the other businesses are okay with it, so that we're not shutting down somebody, so somebody can have a sales event.
And that was the concern, and
yeah.
that's why we directed staff to bring back more information. Cara?
Definitely open to talking about it. There's never any downside to that, to looking at it further. Appears it's now come up a few times, so yeah, I think it needs to be discussed.
And
Yeah.
it has happened in the past, and from
Yeah.
what we've experienced from staff, we haven't had any complaints with the UTC event. I think we only had one complaint with the Walzer event.
Correct.
Only one.
Yeah, and I
So-
think as long as businesses are voluntarily agreeing that they are okay with this amongst each other before they're even applying, I don't see a real impediment.
Okay, very good. Dan?
Well, I would agree. I remember when this first came up,
Yep.
I think City Manager Craig Ebling brought it up, and it was back when maybe it was first requested. And because of the nature of that street, it's a 1 block or less distance, and they occupied both properties. As long as neighbors didn't mind, it seemed like a harmless thing. And then, we have the UTC situation. So they're very isolated types of
Yeah.
situations that don't really affect the rest of the city, but we're trying to make a citywide policy on something that is only really isolated to a couple different scenarios. And so I'm not sure really, I think when we have it in a broader discussion, it becomes very difficult, because now we're just basically saying, well, because of your situation, you have a favored situation, so you can do it, but 97% of the rest of the city can't. And is that really fair? And so I think it's almost best if it's kept on a little more limited, one-off type. Check with all the neighbors around you, make sure they're cool with it, and allow it, rather than blowing it up into a citywide policy, because I think we're going to get into a bigger challenge for fairness in that kind of discussion.
Well, I think, staff, what you're hearing is that the council, and I agree, I think we should take a look at it, because we haven't had any problems with any of the businesses who have used this method of an event for a health fair or a sales. And so let's find out what the limits could be. Because, when I looked at that Walzer, because I remember when we were there for that event, they owned the property to the south and they owned the property to the north. And it's Burkhart's, isn't it?
That's correct.
Short Street, they own all of it, and there was no impediment to any of the other car dealerships. All their customers can access them. So, but there was one complaint. UTC, I see no impediment in that regard as well. And I think if, in just going around the city, down where BCSI is, even if those businesses, Altabelli and BCSI in that cul-de-sac, if they wanted to do something in that little cul-de-sac,
Well, it's a true dead end, so yeah, it's different.
it's a dead end. Nobody's going to be impacted. And I think I was at a barbecue for one of the businesses down there, and and there wasn't any complaints, so, yeah.
And just to
Councilmember.
go a little further though, Dan, I think it's necessary that we really be clear about it, because I'm new business A, and I see that Walzer's doing something, and I don't check the ordinance, and I think, geez, I
Yeah.
can have a sales
Yeah.
event in front of my business. So I think we really need to be
Yeah.
clear, because
I do too,
inevitably, that could happen.
yeah.
They might say, geez, that's a really good sales technique, we want to do that.
Yeah.
So that's all I'm not saying you didn't say, that we
No, I-
really be clear about it, but I think we need to be clear,
Yeah.
otherwise, then
Yeah.
then it's open.
It's kind of been the
for everyone.
discussion, or I guess the on and off debate relating to this issue since it was first brought up years ago. And I understand we want to have a broader discussion and maybe put a policy in place. I think we're going to end up, unfortunately, acing out 99% of the city's businesses from being able to do anything. And it's all going to be, if you happen to just be on the street that's a dead end, you get to have this. But if you don't, you don't. and so be it. If that's what it is, that's what it is.
That's what it is. There are a lot of
Yeah.
businesses that are in, so the thing is, but we do have to have something that all of us, staff and our businesses, all understand what the rules are. Steve?
Madam Mayor, members of the council, I think it's going to boil down somewhat to public safety, access to surrounding businesses.
Yeah.
And in that way, at least it won't be arbitrary. It'll be a set of standards based on the type of street you're on. If that type of street is eligible, is it the only access? And if it is the only access to the other businesses, consent on that street. I think we can come back with some rules that'll at least provide the parameters. You're right. There will be certain businesses, just because of their locations, they'll never have that opportunity because they're on higher volume streets or things of that nature, and we'll have to cross that bridge. But I think what it brought to our attention this year is if we didn't put some rules in place, we were going to start getting requests, and then without rules, then staff is
Where do you go?
making picks, not necessarily, there's no rules to follow. And so our ordinance really was not equipped to deal with this. So we'll have to try it out, and I think the council's very good at taking a look at
Yeah.
things, and if it doesn't work, we revisit it
That's right.
and make fixes to it. And it hasn't been a problem, and we don't want it to be a problem.
That's right. And we
I'm-
can always go for a year and see how it all works out, but we need staff to bring something back to us.
Yep.
So,
Thank you.
question number one, it's a go, but let's understand more. And I think the critical items are the street, we can't have it on collectors or any of our thoroughfares. But, so we can put some limitations on it, and I think one of the critical factors, public safety. Can our first responders and police get to an incident if there is an incident? Mhm. Bill?
I think what we're saying, and I'm sure Steve's saying, is that Eric, the chief, both chiefs will take a look at it
Yeah.
and give us their
Yeah.
opinion about safety,
Yeah.
and if it, meets your criteria, their criteria, et cetera.
So it's police and public works and
Fire.
our staff will take a look at that. Okay, second question, does the council want to allow commercial non-sales events, like employee events? And I think we just said that that's something that, you haven't had any, I have not received any complaints. Nobody else from staff have received any complaints. And I know you do such a wonderful job, and I thank you all for that. So, again, what would be a limitation on some of that? And I think it follows from the first one to the second one. Okay, and council, you all agree? Okay? Clear direction to
Yes.
staff. And then your third point, you're
Correct.
assuming that the council is okay with the current regulations regarding residential block parties? Absolutely, because there's been wonderful block parties and weddings in neighborhoods that are dead end or have a cul-de-sac. And they work well, and I think Public Works have seen some of that when we have construction and when people have weddings and all of that kind of events that's going on. Are you all right with this, with our policy staying in place about the block parties and those events?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
all right. Staff, I think, is there any other questions that you need? Anything that needs to be clear? Jenny?
Madam Mayor, I just want to make sure we're all clear on the process. So we'll bring back some ordinance ideas back to a work session. And then also, what we've been working on, Regina has been working on trying to streamline our special events permit process.
Yes.
So once we come back to you with specific direction on the right-of-way, we'll incorporate that into the larger work that Regina is working on the special event streamlining.
Excellent.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for the clarification on the process, so that everybody understands, those who are watching, our businesses who are impacted, and all of us, so we know the direction. Thank you for coming in.
Yes, you're very welcome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Regina, is there something else that you need?
I'm good, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, I think staff has direction. The next one, and I believe this one is yours as well. This is the sketch plan for the Chase Home luxury rental on Nicollet Plaza parcel. Okay, Regina.
Hi,
Hi.
thank you. The second item is, the city staff was approached by Chase Real Estate. with the concept for a vacant parcel on Nicollet, south of 13, north of Travelers Trail. I'm sure many of you are familiar with it within our heart of the city. It's part of a original plan unit development that was approved back in 2004. Encompassed the entire 20-acre parcel that you see highlighted on the slide. Consisted of Cub Foods, retail, some mixed use, all of it which was built except for the property highlighted on the corner. It is important to note that there was a EDA contract as well as TIF agreement on the property as well.
And that plan is coming due to be decertified in
2019.
2019. I knew it was coming down very quickly.
So some potential amendments will need to be made to that. So the proposal is for a mixed-use building, very similar in scope to what was approved back in 2004. There are some changes, however, that I do want to highlight. I have a table up on the slide that compares the two. Highlights are that 10,000 square feet of retail was approved back in 2004. However, the EDA contract says a minimum of 8,000 square feet, so I should point that out. The 2017 proposal shows 8,000 square feet of retail on the ground floor, and that would face First Avenue, really mirror the existing Nicollet Plaza mixed-use building that's there today, and that's consistent. 129 units were proposed. If you look at some of the documents, it ranges 129 to, I'd say, about 131, 132. But minimum 129 units were approved in 2004. 169 units are proposed as part of the concept. Density-wise, for the parcel itself, if you zoom in on that, it's 52 units per acre in 2004 versus 67 units per acre proposed today. And again, that's focused on the property itself, not taking the net density, not the gross density for the entire property. The parking, very similar parking situation. From what I could tell from the approved plan, it's very consistent with 170 underground spaces and approximately 50 surface stalls. I should note on the previous slide that the map showed that this is in close proximity to the future Orange Line station as well as the Burnsville Transit Station, Minnesota Valley Transit Authority Station. So although there may be additional units and the same amount of parking, there are transit opportunities for the potential people that will live there. It's also important to note that there are cross-access and cross-parking agreements established. Of course, that likely would have to be amended privately, but that is something that is currently in place. There are some changes to the open space. I would say the current proposal that we're seeing before us is richer in the proposed amenities. The courtyard is larger. There's a pool that's shown on the concept plans, which is, again, greater level of amenities than before. The unit breakdown is different. There are 3-bedroom units proposed in this concept as well as additional 1 bedrooms. That would be the major difference. This slide gives you an overall comparison of the 2004 plan versus the proposed concept. Again, very similar in nature to what was approved in 2004. Again, the yellow represents the proposed retail. The green represents the slide to the photo to the right shows the landscape courtyard area and potential pool location. And then there's also amenities within the building that are described by the developer as well. As far as architecture, the graphic on the top of the slide shows a 2004 approval, and it really mirrors the existing building that's built today. The proposed, or the 2004 approval on that vacant lot, really it was supposed to mirror what was built. And the concept that we're seeing today is similar in some qualities, but different in others. And I'd like to point out some of those qualities. The roof line is different. The colors of the building are different. And some of the mix of materials are different. But it's still 4 stories, still approximately the same height conceptually as proposed, and still does have that retail ground floor and the housing above. We do have some questions for the council that we'd like you to discuss and to weigh in on. I should have mentioned that the proposal is for rental. That's a change from the 2004 approval. The 2004 approval was for condos or owner-occupied units. So staff wanted to check in with council to see, does this align with your ends and outcomes statement of 70% home ownership versus 30% rental within the city?
Before we get to the questions that you have for the council, I'd like to hear from the applicant.
I apologize. I completely forgot to mention they are in the audience
Yeah.
today. We have representatives from Chase as well as the architecture firm and the real estate development company.
Because it would be helpful for us and our listening audience and everybody to understand what is being proposed and what would be the compelling reason for us to change this. And many factors have changed since we put this into place. So we need to understand all of that. We didn't understand that there was going to be a recession, and then a lot of our single-family dwellings converted to rental, which really had an effect on these goals. So there are many factors, and I think we need to just set that aside right now, and the questions, and let's hear from the applicant.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I
Okay.
apologize too for not bringing that up in the
No.
beginning.
So if the applicant can come forward and give us your name and address, and then maybe we can pull up another chair. And
Oh,
is there someone else? Is your architect going to be speaking as
Yes,
well?
I will speak briefly, and I'll talk about who we are, Chase Real Estate, what we do,
Absolutely.
and then Tamara, who is with our sister company,
Yeah.
Stonebridge, will talk and how
Yeah.
we.
So all of you who are going to
Sorry.
have speaking roles, please come to the table so that the camera can catch you and everybody can see you, because we're live.
All right. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay. Please introduce yourself and give us your address and also your role with the company.
Okay. Yes, I am Joe McWoyne. I'm with Chase Real Estate. I am development manager there. We're down the road, actually, on County 42. Andy, the owner, is here with us tonight.
And how long have you been on County Road 42?
How long have we been there, Andy?
2001.
2001, okay. I'm an architect, but I also manage our new developments. With me is Tamara, our sister company, Stonebridge.
Hi, I'm Tamara Fries. I'm with Stonebridge, and we are a construction company for multi-family housing. In addition, we own our properties, and we also manage all of our properties as well. So we started in 2011, and I've been here ever since 2011.
Very good.
Hi, I'm Link Wilson from Cost Wilson Architects.
Welcome.
Thank you. So we have prepared a presentation. I will go through some of our latest projects, if we have that prepared. Sure. And then I will tell you kind of how our company works. So Chase and Stonebridge are owned by the same company. We're basically sister companies. So our business model really is not just developer. It's developer, owner, builder, and then manager. If I just push right.
We'll test it out. Yep.
Okay, so there we are. That's what this slide showcases. So as you see, we manage, a lot of our employees manage our properties and are on-site. We have built 10 multifamily housing products in the last 10 years, and we still manage and own all of them. And note that 11th one in the bottom right corner is the condo on Nicollet Park Crest that we developed about 10 years ago. So I'd like to show you some of our recent properties, which we would consider upscale properties. This was just opened in December in St. Paul. It is called V2. It is our Phase 2 Victoria Park property. It is a 5-story building with 6-story corners. These are some of the typical units. All of our units have granite countertops, wood flooring, LED lighting, high-quality doors and furnishings. Some of those units on the corners we upgrade, and for a lot of empty nesters, they like to have gas ovens and large expansive spaces. And we have large windows in all of our properties with expansive views. So a lot of you have seen the property, and I hope we're impressed. The flats at Cedar Grove, which will probably be our closest comp, which is 4 miles away. In Egan, this was another property that was coordinated with the city. Victoria Park was also coordinated with the city. The flats architecture is a little more contemporary because of what that kind of redevelopment was for. You'll see the kind of expansive lobby. We always do a 2-story entry lobby. We have many club rooms, large fitness rooms. The amenities have really expanded in the last few years for these upscale rental properties. Units tend to be getting smaller. What we're proposing tonight is what our bread and butter, I would say, is kind of a 950 square foot 1+ den. Our target market is really the young professionals, newly married couples, and empty nesters. So here's some more of those units. Walk-in closets, again, granite countertops. And what I was going to mention is our amenity spaces. So the units get smaller. I'd like to note that our units have increased because the condos, we don't have those plans from the 2004 development, but those were likely 1,200 square foot 2 and 3 bedrooms. We have an increase in units because, like I said, most of these units will be in the 900 square foot range. We will still have some of those really cool 2-bedroom corners, but the amenities are larger. And people get out of their units, and they use our large work-from-home spaces. We have built-in booths. We have mezzanines that have meeting room tables. So that's where I'll hit here. This is an entry lobby of V2 Apartments. Just around the corner is the coffee. We have a concierge to the right. Club room. This was just rented by one of our residents for their Christmas party. And we always have a shuffleboard table or something to play. Another club room. This is our lounge. You can watch TV or the game at the bar. And we do a lot of, so that you can feel like you really have an expanded living room, you know, beyond getting out of your unit. People want that, get out of your unit and, you know, explore more of the property. Get into the yoga studio, which is larger than my fitness room in my condo building now. So, and then finally, our outdoor space. I think Regina mentioned we do have kind of enhanced proposal for our courtyard. We'll have a pool, more outdoor dining spaces, a fire pit. So these properties have really become an amenity-rich lifestyle more than anything. So I will end on that and turn it over to Tamara, but I'd like to note that a lot of the studies recently have kind of showcased, I can't read what I highlighted, but it's really part of this renters by choice movement. Like I said, a lot of empty nesters. And the biggest growth we've seen is actually in the 50 plus. That's the biggest change, the delta. People are moving out of their homes and want that easier, you know, they don't have to mow their lawn, and they're looking for this lifestyle, which our properties are managed, and we have packaging and everything on the property. So I will move that over to Tamara, and she will talk about how we manage and maintain our properties.
Before we move to Tamara, there's a question from Dan, Councilmember Keeley.
Just an observation, and I went through, and thank you for the tour, went through those 2 properties, and it's really hard not to feel like you're looking at a 5-star hotel lobby and meeting room. I mean, that is the nicest, highest quality, I guess, commons area that I've ever seen in any rental anywhere. And they are absolutely beautiful. You build a fantastic product. I was extremely impressed. And looking at the pictures, I was there. Look even, I mean, they're that nice in person. Very, very high quality.
Yeah, and we of course intend to do the same. We'll have the same amount of amenities. We're actually thinking of tweaking it so that you have more smaller spaces, like maybe a wine cellar or private dining. We're thinking of how people come home and have happy hour. And like I said, get out and socialize in our units.
And then one just add on, in this, I've talked to a few people, and had this been already built in Burnsville, I would likely be, my wife and I, being empty nesters, would be a future renter of yours, because of really the amenity rich and what it brings. It's also an opportunity for people like myself to pull equity out of a home that we own to buy something, you know, in another state out west, Florida, Mexico, whatever it might be, to invest in another home and still remain residents here in our hometown where our families are and grandchildren are, et cetera. So a lot of reasons why renting is booming and has been booming for a long time everywhere but here in Burnsville.
Okay. Any other questions? Do you have a question or comment?
Do you have your building, I toured your building as well, and I agree with Dan, it's gorgeous. Could you kind of give us the age demographic of that building over in Egan?
Yeah, actually, we do, in about 3 slides, we did do a fall study of our residents' age, income, so Tamara can probably.
So probably I'm going to allow them to move forward
Move
with
forward
it,
with
and
it. They
we'll
got the
have
slide.
more, yes. Tamara,
Good evening,
welcome,
council members.
yes.
Thank you. As Joe kind of stated, obviously, you know, our company's unique in the way that we own, build, manage our properties. So we do have a very high interest and take a great deal of pride in maintaining and providing the best customer service that we can possibly do while retaining our residents and being active members of the community. Some of the features that we have in as our management company that we would have here as well: 100% smoke-free living, concierge at the lobby, so our concierge would do things for our residents like accept packages on your behalf, coordinate gardening clubs, book clubs, monthly social events. We have controlled access, so all of our buildings are controlled by key fob, and we also have call boxes, so you're able to buzz in the pizza guy or your grandkids or whoever might be stopping by to visit. As you can see up here, there's quite a long list, but our office is open 7 days a week, so we do have 24-hour on-call maintenance, emergency response. We also have professional on-site management through our management company. Something that we are constantly trying to strive for is to make the experience as comfortable and convenient as possible for our residents. So we are definitely going along the virtual path of paying your rent online, submitting any work requests online, doing your whole application process over the internet. So this is going to give everyone a streamlined access to their apartment community. We also use a Kingsley survey company that benchmarks throughout the industry how our residents are, you know, feeling about the homes, what their work order experience was, their move-in, move-out experience. So we're constantly trying to, you know, survey our residents, gauge what our management company is doing well, things that we can improve on, and just continue to be the best that we can possibly be. Let's see, next here. Our residents, like Joe kind of touched on, mostly young professionals, couples, college graduates, and empty nesters. Average age is in the mid-30s, and then we're also seeing a hike in the empty nesters, 50s, 60s, professional jobs with high incomes. The trends in the rental market, obviously, with some of the experiences that we've had over the past 10 years, people are opting to rent instead of buy, whereas before it maybe wasn't an option to buy, so they were forced into rentals. We're seeing people that are highly qualified to own their own home that are choosing this lifestyle. The demand for maintenance-free living, that's something upscale, amenity-rich. You can invite your friends over and be proud of where you live. We have guest suites for visitors. So if you have your family coming into town, they also feel like they're at home within your building as well. And the demographic report, like Dan had asked about the flats at Cedar Grove in Egan, opened in 2014. And our average age is 38. The age groups, as you can see, is kind of broken down 24 to 34. We have 47% of our population, and over 50 is 28%, so that came in second. And the households mainly consist of singles and then 2 people, and the household income total is $95,000 per year. Common employers include 3M, Allina Health, Blue Cross Blue Shield, Thomson Reuters, Wells Fargo. And then, of course, with the Vikings coming into town, we're starting to get some calls on that. So Victoria Park Apartments in St. Paul, similar age group, 24 to 34 is our highest population. Average income for the household, 81, and then mostly singles and 2-person as well. This is Victoria Park Phase 1. As part of the development team, our management company gets the unique opportunity to look at the plans and review them and make any revisions according to what we're experiencing at our other properties and how residents are using their homes, how we can improve the use and the features. This was completed in 2013. We have 215 homes. This was the first phase to the V2 building that Joe showed earlier. So we have several different methods to maintaining our properties. We use daily work order submission, including follow-ups by our staff, monthly preventative maintenance, weekly preventative maintenance, unit-by-unit inspections twice a year, and then we do walkthroughs with our corporate staff, at least quarterly, lender and city inspections yearly, and all items are tracked through our property management system, which is called Yardi.
Say again, what is that?
Yardi.
What is Yardi?
That's our property management system. So we have all of our residents and everything kind of in one software
Okay.
grouping.
Okay.
So everything is tracked. So we put it in a schedule, and on a daily basis, they're refreshing with what, we need to change the furnace filters today. We need to check the, walkways, and so everything is automated.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm going to wait, Tamara, till you're finished with all of that, but
Okay.
you said something and I'm thinking, okay, I need to understand what that is.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
understood everything else up to our Yardi.
Okay, yes, it's industry jargon.
Yeah.
So, let's see, next we have there's a couple more pictures of Victoria Park. Again, you'll see one of our club rooms, and we have, the general fitness center. It's open 24 hours a day, the 2-story mezzanine with office kind of spaces. I actually lived there for 3 years and loved it. Worked from there at times too. So Waterford Commons is our community in Rosemount. We have 108 apartment homes there, in addition to 10 retail and commercial spaces. And we are 100% occupied in our retail and continue to be highly occupied in our residential as well. Kind of just some more photos of our upgraded apartment homes, granite counters, and as you can see, this building
When
is
was that built?
2008. So it's,
Okay.
getting to that 10-year mark, but it's,
No, I recognize some of the features inside. Looks like Parkrest.
yeah, yeah,
The archways.
yep.
Next
Okay,
slide.
yep. And this is River Crossing, which is part of our campus in St. Paul. We have 597 homes in this campus. We're right around that 10-year mark as well. So what we do is we go in and we are redoing the clubhouses and different amenity areas to make sure that we're keeping up with the market and giving our residents, the best possible finishes.
So is that like your capital improvement plan?
Right, yes. And along with kind of our own capital improvement plan, we also have physical condition and needs assessments done to our communities, and that gives us a 30-year plan of the reserves that we're putting away to make sure we have, significant operating reserves to be able to do the improvements that we need, in addition to any inspections that we would have from our lenders, including, HUD reacts and things that we're constantly having.
Tell
in all
us
of our
what REACT is, because that's an acronym.
Yes, that is for basically where they come in and they inspect all of the exterior of the community, 10% sampling of the apartment homes that are occupied, and they give us a score based on what they find, and then you get another inspection every 1, 2, or 3 years, depending on that
Okay.
score.
Do we have another?
Yep, the next one is just some more.
Further updates to the comments?
Yep. Common area photos and plaza area photos from that community. And then we have Hearthstone in Apple Valley. And this has 228 apartment homes and townhomes. And this was built in 2003. And just, right around that same age, in addition to doing common areas, we're obviously looking at what we can do in the apartment homes as well. So updating flooring, upgrading, LED fixtures, putting in more energy efficient appliances upon replacement, and things of that nature. So that is all I have. So if you have questions for me, otherwise I will pass it on to Link.
Okay. Questions for Tamara? Okay.
Nice thing.
We're going to move to Link, and then perhaps after that, we'll have a discussion.
Certainly. I'll try to be as quick as possible. Again, my name's Link Wilson. I'm president of Cost Wilson Architects. We're just up the road here in Bloomington. We're a 35-person specialty housing design firm, and for the last 30 years here in the Twin Cities, that's all I've done. And so I want to give you a little bit of a historical perspective. Certainly, I'm the architect for the Cedar Grove project, and it's always fun to work with this group. They have a ton of great ideas. Other clients in town, I'm seeing very, very similar types of patterns. We certainly were heavily involved in the for sale market. This is a rental property in downtown Minneapolis that was really a game changer, not only in its exterior materials, but also what that demographic living inside the building, again, empty nesters, but also young professionals in downtown Minneapolis with huge fitness facilities, yoga studio, concierge, and this is really driven by these two different demographics, which actually are very demanding. One group really knows what they want, they have experience. The other, the younger group, does their homework and really researches. And all of us are held accountable really to that research that they do. So we have tremendous, in many facilities that we're doing throughout the metropolitan area, Milwaukee, around the Midwest, indoor spaces, beautiful outdoor spaces. I want to step back a little historical perspective. 2006, I was the architect of record and designer for, I think, probably one of the most expensive condominium projects and one of the most sought-after addresses at 317 Groveland in Loring Park. This project sold out immediately before it was even close to being completed. Each one of those door leaves cost $22,000. The silly things that we did in 2003 when we were designing this project, and it sold. There were people that combine units and spend $2.8 million on the top floor for a downtown view. We don't see that anymore. There have been tremendous changes. Banking laws have changed. Our lien laws have changed, where now condominium associations have more rights than the banks, and so banks don't like to lend in those types of conditions. A few years later, we designed a project and it was built right next to the light rail line. This particular project had 10 times the amount of common space that this luxurious condominium had. Some of it was the neighborhood, its connectivity to transit, but we then continued to see that trend. This is the project outside of Minneapolis where the bus can drive through the building. I don't know if you've seen this. There's parking below and there's housing above, but it's connected to transit. We have a lot of airline employees live here and downtown residents as well.
Is it a condo or an apartment?
It's an apartment.
Okay.
So everything
I think
that
the
I'm
distinction
showing
that you, because Groveland is a condo.
Groveland was the last condominium that I did in 2006.
Yeah.
And I have not done one since, and I'm
Okay.
busier than about any architect in town. This is a project in Highland, again, trying to create a very walkable community, integrate ourselves. You can see the church spire into the background, a very popular project. Not only indoor spaces, but again, these important outdoor spaces. And then I repeat the Vic 2 project that we did. This is a view we don't see very often, where the scale of it really integrates itself into the neighborhood. We normally see that Mississippi River view. Again, and you saw this slide before, and I think it's relevant because when we think about your community and the heart of the city in this particular site, I see myself up here in this corner instead of looking out over the Mississippi River. If we're allowed to build this particular project, we'll look out a beautiful skyline view of downtown Minneapolis, which is just absolutely wonderful. And so there are some building blocks. Architecture is certainly not a recipe, but there are certain things that when we look at a site, we want to know, because no building's the same, because no site is the same. But we look at Nicollet Avenue and we ask ourselves, how can we integrate into this neighborhood? We have Travelers Trail. You see the little blue arrow there. We're going to look from the north towards the south up Nicollet. And this is what, right now, what we're thinking about as a view is we would look up south, right there at the gateway to the heart of the city. Right now, we're proposing 4-story. I think a 5-story building certainly is compatible. This next slide is the same, but it just have got to go back and forth. We have a compatible height with this, with the other properties on Nicollet. We always want to form an urban street wall. And then I'm not going to go into the details of what is below, but there are certain building blocks that I think are very, very important to have.
So, Link, you need to also understand, you want to see the skyline of Minneapolis. So when the heart of the city was put in place, the heart of the city and that whole area, there is a grade change as you continue. So, Andy, when we built Parkcrest, we wanted to make sure that it's not going to have visible obstruction for about 2 levels from Parkcrest to downtown. So what is the grade change?
We
I
measured
think
that.
that'll go later, but you guys
Sure,
need
sure.
to
I
be
measured it today. It's
aware of
20
that.
feet different.
Pardon me?
Roughly 20 feet will be your first level to our first level.
Because I think 4 stories really allowed for that building to be built without obstruction.
Sure. And that's what we're proposing.
Yeah.
I think
You said
as
5, I just wanted to
Sure.
remind you all.
Sure. As you feel that street, I think that 4 stories is appropriate, but I don't think that 5 stories would be out of scale. But certainly that's what we're proposing as a
I don't either.
4-story building. And then as we start to think about Travelers Trail, that entrance into the Cub Foods and other shopping, I think we need to consider changing our building feel a little bit to, and I'll go to the next, I'll go to the, stay on that slide. Again, compatible scale with Nicollet Plaza, reference to storefront, street furniture, really activating that street and helping to guide that pedestrian path and vehicular path towards the Cub Foods Center. So there certainly would be some strategies that we would use from a design standpoint that I think would make this a very, very nice project in your community. And then I think lastly, we're all formed by the people who live in these apartment homes. We do have that young demographic. Every photo I've shown today are from facilities that we've designed. So this is just a workspace within a property that we designed. And anytime I walk through here, which is usually about every 6 months, we go and we visit this particular facility, I always see, day or night, young people working on their laptops, working from home in the common areas. And so we want to think about those young people who perhaps do not live in Burnsville today, but we want to give them that opportunity that if this were a for sale property, they may not have that potential to move to Burnsville. But I think as many people have talked about this evening, there are homeowners that live in Burnsville that also would like to look for alternatives. So I definitely throughout the metropolitan area see rental as a way of just diversifying a city and making a city a little bit more of a rich place to live. And so I think we'll open it up for questions now.
Okay, questions, comments? Bill?
I'm not countering your thing, and this would be a special project, but just for the public, again, remind the public, this is not about your special project. We already have 35% apartments in Burnsville, so we have a very diverse, compared to
Rental,
Apple.
not apartments,
I mean,
rental.
rental, compared to Apple Valley that has 20%, or Egan that has much less percent. So just so the public knows, we already have a great diverse multifamily rental base. This is not responding to your special project, so I'm responding to your comment.
Right, absolutely. But I think in the heart of the city, this would be a little bit different project than what is in the heart of the
I
city.
agree, I'm not,
Yeah.
I'm talking
Sure.
about, you said Burnsville, and I'm just
Absolutely.
making,
Okay. Any other thoughts, questions about the project that is being proposed for this area?
Oh, thank you thank you very much for bringing this project forward. It's a great-looking project. I have more comments later, but I'll just say that we've been missing in action in the new amenity-rich product for the last 15 years for various reasons. I'm delighted that this day has come, that we have a project in front of us, and that Burnsville's economic development is going to start really moving forward. And I encourage the rest of my council members to be open-minded to this project, and I hope we vote to approve it to move forward, because it is an exciting project, and Burnsville is way, way overdue for having this kind of project come into our city. So thank you for bringing it.
Any other thoughts? Okay, one of the things, as we have this discussion before us, and I have shared this concern with the developer, and that is the sustainability and maintenance of the building long-term. Because we, as a city that is built out, have product in the city that was built in the 70s. With the, when they came in, they said this was a luxury apartment. And then what we have experienced is that as the product changes hands, less and less revenues were put back to upgrade or improve the product, to the point that now the city comes in because of complaints from residents within the apartment community and are saying, there's a problem, and here are some problems. We shut down one because of health issues to the community that was living in there. So for me, it is very important. I look at the goals that we had set back in the 2000s. I think it was in 2000, Jenny, when we set those goals. And it was a different day. But at the same time, we wanted to make sure, because the market at that time was about home ownership, and it was driven for home ownership, and everyone wanted the American dream, and that was good. But at the time also, there was a pushback about density. But I think a lot has changed since then. And the recession also looked at the change in the goals from home ownership to renters, where our residential, single-family residential homes were converted to rental. So that contributed to the 35% in rental units. So I did some checking with some of my colleagues around the metropolitan area, and a city, Hopkins, 4 square miles, 65% rental. So I asked them what they're doing, and they're adding more rental units. What are they doing? What I liked about what I heard today was the REACT tool that you have in place, your physical needs improvement that you have in place, and also your maintenance property review twice a year on the units, and so you're staying on top of it. The other part that I heard, which is different from a lot of the other property owners that own apartment complexes here in the city, is that, Andy, you have owned your portfolio from the very beginning, and you have not sold any of those
We have not. No,
buildings.
that's not our plan. That's not our business plan. It's basically to grow the portfolio, not turn it into, I guess they call them merchant builders or something that would build it and sell it and build
Okay.
another one and sell it. So we kind of have a small
Yeah.
company. We don't do one.
For me, it's about the maintenance and sustainability of the product long-term, that it doesn't become a problem for the community and city of Burnsville. Because let me tell you that the property value in any community is very important, because we look at our market value. When the raters, the bond raters look at us, they look at our market value. So when properties start to lose their value, it has a direct impact on our market value and has a direct impact on our bond rating. So if we're going to look and say, we're going to make, because it's not necessarily true, and I've really looked at this, to have a 70-30, and it has to do with apartments, whether one is, does it continue to add value to our value? And then I look at the single family that Jenny's crew and her staff have issues, and I see some of those emails because they come to me because they're renters. So I'm looking at all of that and we're saying, okay, how do we solve the problem? And how do we maintain our market value and continue to proceed? So members of the council, we have a project that's before us, but it's a rental project, and we have our ends and outcomes and our goals call for 70-30. Now, if we're going to say we're going to approve this, remember, there is a public hearing. So, Link, there will be a public hearing. So if you're going to say 5 stories, let me tell you, the people around there are going to show up to the planning commission, and we have the planning commission chair sitting here. So you want this to pass? Whether, if we approve this to move forward, keep that in mind. Because we are transparent, and we're going to make sure that people are part of the process. So, members of the council, do you want to revisit the goals on our housing stock?
Absolutely.
Okay? Bill?
I'll listen to my colleagues.
Oh, come on. I
Well, of
think
course,
I
I'm
know.
gonna see what happens with this.
Okay.
I'm not, I guess it's a special project, just so people understand, the public understands, that eventually new stuff becomes old stuff. We know that's
Yeah.
happened in Burnsville. There's a wonderful, obviously a wonderful company.
But I think we can put-
But again, I'm just saying that as long as we understand what the risk is and do with our eyes wide open and understand that.
I'm going to go around first before I come back to you.
That's the risk.
Okay, Cara?
Yeah, I am very open to this, and the home I own is from the 1970s, and I certainly don't mind that it became old. I love it just the same, so I have no problem with this. People are changing how they live, what they want, and we need to change with that. We need to be open to that.
Okay. Dan?
Since I spoke, if you don't mind, I'll go last.
Well, he already said absolutely, so
I think
he's
he
going to
wanted
come back with another
I think he wanted to make a
comment.
few more comments.
Huh?
I think he wanted to say a few more words.
All right.
I just wanted to remind Councilmember Coughlin that old stuff gets older as well. And 70% of our stock doesn't even meet the fire code in this city, today's fire codes. So we have to start bringing in competition for these buildings to bring up their stock and make it worth people living in. And they're not going to do that. We can't force them as a government to do that, but competitors can force them to do that, and we have to allow that to happen.
Sure. Okay. Now,
Thank you. I thought you'd be longer than that.
Oh, it doesn't take me but a minute.
come on.
Well,
All we want to do is find out this. I think everybody has
Yeah.
said that we like the product.
I think what I'm sensing here is consensus support to move forward with this project. And I just want to take this moment in for the sake of, this is a landmark decision today, because I've been here for about 9 years, and this door has been so closed and locked and slammed that we couldn't even get one to come before us. So it's been a long 6-year wait for a majority of support on this council for a rental option. And all along, for 6 years, that Dan Gustafson brought this to my attention and caused me to think differently about it. It's been a long 6 years waiting for a project like this. And this is the kind of project we were looking for. It wasn't a blanket statement of more rental. It was specifically introducing a product we don't have, a high-end amenity-rich rental. Because that's a now I'm looking at it.
Let's make sure that there is one that's called Provence, and it's still very, very nice. So let's not get people saying, what? Okay.
If it's on this scale, it's been a hidden gem then for a long time.
Yeah.
And so this is a market balancing, a market shifting move on the part of this council.
Mm-hmm.
To bring in and introduce into this marketplace, Dan touched on it, we are going to incent other existing rentals to upgrade.
Sure.
We're going to show them that in Burnsville, you can rent, if you invest and build a product of this quality, you can raise your rents. And there is a higher level. We have an inordinate amount of very affordable renting in this city, primarily because it's older. And to Dan's point, we have to introduce some new product. Certainly, as Councilmember Schultz put it, things are changing, right? How people are living are changing. What they're doing in their lifestyle is changing. And I cited earlier, I'm a classic example. We're an empty nester, we're selling and we're buying. If this product existed today, we likely would be a tenant in this building. Unfortunately, this is coming way too late for us because we've already made a decision. But we're one of those 50-plus empty nesters looking to change how we live. We're looking for a 5-star hotel environment to live in. We don't have anything like that in this city. And so I'm thrilled, as I said earlier. I'm really, really happy, and I have to, I want to thank Councilmember Gustafson for bringing this up 6 years ago when he served on this council before. And he and I were the only two who were thinking at the time beyond that 70-30 split, that it wasn't the 70-30, it was what the product is and what we needed. And so thank you, and a very warm, personal thank you to Mayor Couts, because your articulation of where you're at today was brilliant, and it is exactly right on.
Yeah.
Things have changed. And you were a staunch advocate of no more rental. And you have recognized all the road signs that things have changed today, and I'm so glad that you're open-minded to this.
Well, the thing
Because this
is-
is the right move this is absolutely the right thing for Burnsville.
I think things have changed. The people in Burnsville have changed. There was a time when density was the bad word
Yeah. Yep. Too dense, right?
in the metro area, not just Burnsville, but density was not a very, when we did the heart of the city, that was too dense.
Yeah.
I think all the arrows on my back have all fallen off.
They've all snapped off.
Because they see that if you do it well, it's a success.
Right.
So, but things have changed. But I remember the conversation when we're building an urban setting with mixed-use development, and people thought we were crazy, and the density was the issue at that time. But things have changed, demographics have changed, we have millennials, we have a different way of people going to work and working from home in terms of what they do. It's a whole new atmosphere and environment that we live in. And when that happens, if we don't move with the times, then we are left behind. And so in doing that, because I talked to my mayor colleagues from around the metro area, and boy, Edina is doing a whole lot of stuff. Hopkins is even doing, they have 65% rental and are doing more rental housing by tearing down some other stuff and putting some other things in. So, and also being a part of ULI and looking across the country and what people are doing in other areas. I love this community, and we need to make sure that we are good stewards of what we're doing with regard to the product choices. If we're going to attract more businesses, they're going to have this, the housing mix and the transportation that bring people to work. If we're going to have talent, and we need young talent as well as people who are changing in their work, then we need to have the product for them to live in. And the area in the heart of the city is a transit-oriented development, because MBTA across the street on 13 is the whole concept that was, and now we have the Orange Line and everything else. So I think the time is right, but we need to also be very mindful about how we work with the developers and how the product is maintained long-term. So they need to also have pride in their product. And that's what I say to all of these property owners with apartments when they come in and they talk with me, as I say, do you have pride in your product? Because if you have pride, then you're going to do something about it. If you don't have pride, and they'll all say, yeah, and then I think, Jenny, on that one property on the Parkway going towards 11, I think that new owner is doing better. Because I told them if they didn't, they'll have to come in and talk to me again. But I think they're doing a good job.
Much better.
Yeah, okay.
Madam Mayor, just one comment. You said you really want the owners of this project to have pride and keep and maintain it.
Well,
I think
these
they spoke
owners,
to
I
that
do know.
earlier. I think that was well established by Andy and his crew
and I
here today,
live
that
in
they
one of his
take pride in
products.
it. Yeah, and you're a living example of,
I live
they
in
own
one
it,
of
they
his
build it, and they
products.
maintain it, and they hold on to it, they don't flip it, and that's
Yeah.
a great developer
Well,
for us to have.
Actually, it's a condo, so I own my
Well,
unit. But the thing is, there are also impediments, and perhaps Joe and Link and Tamara, you can speak to it. There are impediments with the law with regard to condos, and I believe with the work that we're doing with the ULI and the Regional Council of Mayors, there is a bill that's going to go before the legislature that's going to address this very onerous law with regard to condos and the warranty.
Yes, I believe there's a downtown group that's working on changing the 10+ to, basically 12 years to sue, whether you maintain your condo building or not, which is restricting a lot of new product in the condo market. I believe there's only one developer building condos.
Yeah, because it's very onerous, very hard. And so these are all different factors that are rolling into play. So, members of the council, it appears to me that we are saying to staff, move forward with the developer on this project. And then I think during our all-day work session, we need to address this, the
Ins and outcomes.
the
Yep.
ends and outcomes with our home ownership and how we're going to do that. And I have asked our attorney to be at the all-day work session so we can work out what we do with this with regard to what will work for our community.
Sure. Yeah, there's other vacant land that can be developed in the same kind of thing, so
Yeah.
we need to work on that policy.
Okay, so members of the council, direction to staff is have the Yes, Jenny.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, we're looking for direction on this proposal. They have their architect
Yep.
here, they have a plan that they're
And
kind
I
of
think
want to
that's-
proceed with.
yeah.
So if we could walk through these real quick, that will give
Sure.
them direction and us direction. Because their next step is to make an application then with your
Yeah.
support. So we got to get into some details here, so,
So so the thing is, the first one is, we're going to
yes.
move forward and allow them to proceed.
Correct.
The second part here is the number of units, 129 to 120 to 169. Now, I looked at those number of units from 2004 to what you're proposing, and I don't know. And I looked at the breakdown, and I looked at the demographics. So you are looking to the young professionals, single, and then you're looking at the empty nester. And there may be two. So you're looking at one bedroom to one plus den to two. That increases your square footage because you haven't changed the footprint of the building. It's because you rework the numbers for the square footage within those units.
Yes, I think all the condos average 1,200 square feet, which would be quite a large two-bedroom today. Like I said, our majority of our units will be 1+ dens, which are
Yeah.
around 950 square foot
Yeah.
units.
Andy, you want to come to the table, Andy, and introduce yourself so people know who you are?
Hi, I'm Andy
And-
Chase,
and-
and I would like to thank my staff too. I think they did a great job.
And
Thank
Andy,
you.
tell people that you were a Burnsville resident till you moved to Prior Lake, but your business is still in Burnsville. I've known Andy for a long
I moved
time.
here in '87, so I've been in Burnsville in '87, lived in a multifamily housing up on Garden Lane. Yeah, they were old in '87, I think. But, part of that construction thing is, as a builder in that timeframe, there wasn't dollars necessarily available on these projects to really maybe make them as nice, or the products weren't available. Back then, if they were trying to keep it down, they were trying to sell something for
Sure.
$29,000 or something.
Yeah.
So I think some of that has changed with the lower financing and more dollars in the economy. So I think
Right
that's
now, you
part
got to
of
get
what's
under
in the
that
building.
interest rate before it starts to go up.
But that is something with, when you look at even homes that were built in that era, there just wasn't enough dollars for the people to spend on their property. So they figured out how to get the basics done. And so and I don't know if anybody's done this math, but we're in the same footprint.
Yep.
And it does seem like a lot to go from 129 to 169. But that building was actually never drawn. So I'm almost thinking that maybe whoever did that math equation, maybe it wasn't even a right math equation. If you took that same square footage, I don't know that it mattered. Because it's the same square
Yeah.
footage building.
Yeah, I think that's not the issue. I think the issue is that, are we okay with the new
density.
configuration?
Oh, okay.
Not the issue. Yeah, Bill?
I am. I mean, they've factored it all in. They've put on the table a beautiful product. I just want to, again, clarify for the public and some of my fellow council people, I have no objection to older rental, but what we've experienced in the city, nothing to do with you and nothing to do with many owners, but some owners, when they changed hands, they took all
Yeah.
the money out, never put it back in.
Yeah.
We had mold problems, lice problems, mice problems, all kinds of problems where the government then had to get involved, which cost us tens of thousands of dollars of city time that never should have happened, over and over and over with some
Yeah.
of the multifamily apartment rentals. So it has nothing to do with that there's a lot of beautifully old multifamily places. I'm just want to clarify
Yeah.
that was our experience, which has nothing to do with you. So, but I totally support your design and would be amenable to the 160
Yeah.
plus
Okay.
units.
Very good. So everybody is okay with that?
Density, yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
the density. The support to decrease the retail square footage from 10 to 8. Okay, let's have a
The
conversation about
EDA
that.
calls for 8,000, and I don't think that's really that big a deal.
Well, no,
Yeah,
it's
we
not,
thought it was
it's not that
1,200
big a
square
deal.
feet
It comes out on First Avenue, right, Andy? If
And I was
looked at it.
wondering if that's
It-
the same math equation, because if we just take all the retail, all the space that's along First Avenue, that's just what it comes to.
Yeah. Yeah,
I
and I
didn't know.
think if you looked at that blueprint, that was a sketch plan from 2004, it was only on First Avenue also, wasn't it?
That's correct.
It didn't wrap around over to Travelers Trail.
That's correct, from what I've seen.
Yeah,
It appears
so
to be that
that's
way.
where I think what your point is that is the math correct?
Yeah, that's, I'm
Because the
seeing a couple of those
the
things.
footprint is still the same.
Right.
Okay. So, that's fine.
Yep.
Now, is everybody okay then? Because you're mirroring the retail on the other building, side by side. Dan?
Well, I want to talk about the fifth story that the architect talked about. I think that's a good idea for this property, and I'd love to see a rooftop restaurant right on the corner with views of downtown.
Yeah, Andy has to find somebody who wants to do that restaurant.
Joe already knows, and Andy, I've been pushing that with him
Yeah.
to consider, and so if the architect is saying that's feasible for this project, I guess what's the hindrance, or what's the roadblock to putting a fifth story?
Well, we certainly can do it. I mean, Vic 2 was 5 stories. It is a different building type. It does become with a different structural system, but ratings. It's,
Yeah, now
we
you go from
certainly
wood to
can do
steel,
it.
right?
No, it's not to steel.
No.
We've proposed it for, that's what we've spent our time and work on. We just thought we would put it up for
Again,
discussion.
You
but-
will have people from the neighborhood down there, so you want to move forward, or do you want to be obstructed?
Well, who would stop it from being a fifth story? We don't, we don't build one building dependent
Because-
on who gets a view and a building next to it.
It's not about that. It's about agreements with people who bought into certain buildings when it was a planned development, understanding how all of that was going to.
That there
to-
would be a
yeah.
building next door.
And
4
there
stories
was
high
going
that-
to be the buildings, the sister building on Nicollet Plaza. That was a whole concept. So when you have people buying a product, understanding what the vision is, and those people are still there. So, there are other places, like I said to you, if we move down this road, that there are other places for another building.
We have studied this only as a 4-story building at this point. We can't make a decision tonight if we can even, there's too much math that has to be done behind the scenes for 5 stories. So I don't really want to slow down the motion tonight based on a 4 or 5-story building.
Okay, so then, so we're going to stay with the same footprint. Now we look at the materials and the building. Can you put it up, the side by side, please? Now, when I look at that, I see the compatibility of the building and the roof line that is Link, what do you call, when the roof lines are not, they're not all the same, they drop?
Correct. We've maintained, for the most part, the height of the parapet is the same. You can see at the corner
Yeah.
where we've raised that parapet a little bit to identify it with the Nicollet Plaza as their parapet has risen.
Yeah, because I look at that, it's the only one feature on Nicollet Plaza. Is that feature there? I gotta go take a look.
Oh, that is
Yeah,
photo.
that feature is right up there.
Correct.
And it's a feature that gives its, but it doesn't, it still looks like compatible buildings down this corridor.
Yeah, I don't think there's a problem. I think it looks fine.
I'm
You're
totally
okay?
for it. It's totally fine with me.
Okay, all right, Carl? All right, the next question, so we're moving down the line here.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Your next question, okay. The change in the architectural, so the materials, and it looks fine to everybody. Is there support to change the EDA contract and the TIF agreement? EDA to approve the sale to Chase and rental versus owner occupied and a potential assignment of TIF.
Yes, and I think we need to do that as soon as possible.
Yeah,
Yes.
okay, yeah.
You know, I'm usually not a fan of TIF, and I don't know if their
It's only
compliance
got 2
with
years
TIF
left on it.
Only good.
I know, but
Almost
I don't
nothing
know
left.
if what they're gonna have to go through to claim that is gonna be what they want to go through to have it.
Yeah, I don't know if they're going to want to go
It's
down that
gonna be a
road,
pain.
because with only,
Limited benefit.
yeah.
Yeah.
We
Very
understand that
little.
it's a limited benefit. We haven't done the math yet. We just started talking with Skip,
Yeah.
so it's obviously not a big issue
Yeah.
on this project.
So the thing that we just do is approve the sale.
Yeah, that's, I
Uh,
think we need to
yeah.
take action with EDA at the next meeting, if we can.
Yeah.
I don't know how- I
approve-
guess maybe you need to-
Well, Jenny
Couple of
will,
meetings?
yeah, she will get that.
I just don't want to be, I don't want it to be a hindrance for the.
Jenny?
Madam Mayor,
project.
members of the council, there's an application process that we've talked
That's
to
right.
Joe and his team about.
It's-
There's a public hearing process that has to take place to amend the TIF contract.
Yeah.
So we can't just do it at the next meeting.
That's
but
right.
the onus is on them to make application, and we'll process it as
Yeah.
quickly thereafter. If they are taking assignment of the TIF, this gets more complicated. Because now,
Yeah.
our financial advisors have to come in, and we have to do the TIF runs and all this stuff. So it's easier to just approve the change to the contract from
Yeah.
owner to rental, and to approve the sale to Chase and Company.
And the onus now is on them, because
Yes.
they have to file an application. You
Yeah.
can't just say we're going to do it when we have nothing to
No, I
address.
still, I want to do it as soon as possible.
Well, you tell them.
We'll,
They
we'll
have
look
to
into
fi-
how,
they
what
have to
that
file an
process is and
application.
how it affects the building seasons that we have in
Yeah.
Minnesota. And
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's up to them. And the thing is, they know that we're going to move forward with the sale to Chase of this land, and then to change from rental to, from home ownership to rental on the contract. And, okay, so Regina, you have that. Are there any other issues from staff? Any issues that the applicant wants to address? Any issues from members of the council? With that, yes,
Not an issue. I just have to express how good I feel about this evening. It's been the heart of the city, I thought, was a great vision years ago, and we were churning along really well till that recession hit us and pretty much kicked us in the teeth. And it did change the market, and it changed how business is done. And I'm glad that the city is catching up with the market again, and we're doing what we're doing, and I'm looking forward to doing much
Well,
more of this type of
it
activity in the
wasn't
city of
just
Burnsville.
us, it had to do with developers
Oh,
also.
I hear it.
And the other is that we don't have a lot of property. And so the thing is, it had to do with the banking industry as well.
I agree.
And the recession, it was the banking industry.
Oh, yeah.
So all of the things have changed in that arena, and now we have to, now things in the last couple of years have changed, and we're catching up with all of the changes as well, and we're stepping into it. So, if there are no other issues, everyone, staff, and the Chase and Stonebridge folks, thank you very much, and Link. And so you have a green light to move forward. The ball is in your court. You
Thank
know
you.
what to do. You work with our staff. The other stuff is going to come back to us. We will have those discussions during our all-day work session.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Congratulations. Okay. Greenhouse gas assessment and our sustainability update. Sue, welcome. You do good work. Sue, are you going to be at the table, please? And then I understand that you have our consultant, and you, Steve, and Mr. Michael Orange.
Madam Mayor.
Yes, Madam Mayor.
Yeah, Steve.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, get us moving again here, so we still got quite a bit to get done tonight. What you have before you, unfortunately, this was scheduled for September-ish. Something came up, we weren't able to present, and then
Yeah.
budget came up.
Yeah.
So that's why it's bumped to January. The PNRC did see the same presentation back in July of 2017. And so with that, we're going to turn it over to Michael Orange. Michael has been been with Orange Environmental for 10 years, and I believe he was with the city of Minneapolis for 30 years prior to that. He's done baseline assessments for 26 different cities and Washington County, so he's kind of the Minnesota expert on these assessments. And so this is an important presentation. It gives you an idea of what's been accomplished from 2005 to 2015 and what this important component of the sustainability guide plan is. So with that, I'll turn it over to Michael, and then we'll take any questions after Michael's presentation, and then Sue's got a brief, kind of our annual update presentation on the sustainability plan. And so with that, Michael?
Thank you. Welcome, Michael. You're welcome.
Thank you,
Sue.
Mayor Couts, and thank you to the council members as well for inviting me here tonight. And I want to start right off by complimenting your staff. This report is about your city and how it affects the environment. But I experienced, this is my third report, actually the fourth, because I also worked with Rainbow Tree Care on your Emerald Ash Borer management plan. But working with your staff is just wonderful. And I can really be a pest on these reports. They're extremely detailed. They take a lot of time. And I had nothing but terrific support from Sue and the committee and all the staff that helped me on this. So thank you for that. I should begin with what is a baseline assessment. There's basically two types. There's a citywide baseline assessment where, and we did that as well for 2005 and 2009, where basically you look at all of the carbon or carbon dioxide emissions from residential and commercial and industrial, transportation, solid waste, sewer treatment, and so forth, and capture it in a greenhouse gas number. That's not what this is. This is now looking at your city operations. So it's your Public Works Department, it's your City Hall, the energy you're using right here in this building, solid waste as well, and your production of potable water and so forth, and capturing it all together. So what is this good for? The old line is if you don't measure results, if you don't measure I can't even read this. If you don't measure results, you can't tell success from failure. And I'm sure you've all heard of that line. Secondly, I believe for the city operations baseline assessment, it's an environmental equivalent of your city budget. It's your measuring stick, and I believe it's that important. Thirdly, in the future, it's quite possible that it can having done these kind of analyses will enhance your ability to get federal and state funding for projects. It's becoming more of a standard type of thing. The beauty of looking at greenhouse gas tons is that it can be a common denominator for kilowatt hours, for therms of natural gas, for gallons of gasoline and diesel, for tons of solid waste managed, for stormwater management that's in your stormwater sewers, and sanitary waste in your sanitary sewers. It's a way of capturing all of that with a single number, so it's handy. You can you can track change from year to year. And then your policies adopted, I think 3 years ago, were to not only measure, but also reduce. And you adopted the same criteria that the state approved for the state of Minnesota. That is a 15% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions by 2015. So I'm here to report on how you did.
Did we put that in place in 2009, Sue, when we adopted the sustainability plan?
Yes, yeah, that's
Yeah.
when that started.
So this pie chart shows several important things. First of all the emissions that are represented by the green deal with electricity. And electricity accounts for about 83% of all of the greenhouse gas emissions. The remainder are dealing with natural gas and then liquid fuels. But if you look at the big components of this are going to be your potable water, which is 44%, buildings and facilities 28%. I may have my numbers wrong because that's small print for me. Streetlights and signals about 10%. So it helps you steer you where your focus should be by the relative portions of the pie. Now, dealing with energy for this city is very complex. You have 5 different power companies that either distribute or produce power that you use, plus CenterPoint Energy for natural gas. So, and since electricity is the biggest part of the pie, it's really one of the most important parts to examine carefully. This looks at the key factor on emissions for electricity, and that is the greenhouse gas emission rate. How many tons of greenhouse gases to produce a megawatt of electricity is the point here. The gray line at the bottom is Xcel Energy. It has the lowest emission rate. It's the greenest, it's one of the greenest utilities in the country, and it's going down and at a rate faster than other utilities. The highest is the red line, that's Great River Energy. And it has more coal base, so it has the highest emissions per kilowatt hour. There's also the Minnesota Valley Electrical Co-op that's in the middle green line. And looking at all 240 of your electrical meters, the city meters, I've deduced the dotted line is a blended rate. It is still going down, but not as much, of course, as Xcel. This can guide you because electrical, they have districts, it's geographically based. If you have a choice on building a facility, you may want to build where the electricity is cleaner. Here's the end of the story. I'll start at the end and then work backwards. You have reduced your emissions from a 2005 base by 17%. That's your city operations. On the upper left, you can see that's 0. That's the base emissions in 2005. And you can see the percentage reductions for each of those years, 17% in 2015. And I'll go through some of the explanations of how you did this. But first thing I want to say is congratulations.
Thank you, because we exceeded I saw that, and I submitted it to the EPA.
Excellent, excellent. The state incidentally put out their CZO report in August, the Climate Solutions and Energy Opportunity. I may have that acronym correct. And the state did not meet it. They did not even come close to meeting this 15% mark. So, and not many cities have done a city operations assessment, so there's not many cities that have measured this to know. But I'd be surprised if many cities have done a 17% reduction. So, congratulations. Let's look at more of the numbers, but before I do, I think what I've been so impressed with the city is you have everything in place. Your sustainability page, which I'm reproducing there, phenomenal list of reports and analyses that you've done, and the links for people, your climate resilience plan. You are one of the lead cities in the Green Step Cities program, and one of 6, I believe, that's made it to step 4. Sue's was one of the leaders of developing that program and helping the city get there, and that's quite an accomplishment. So your sustainability guide plan, your sustainability plan for new developments, and more recently, regional indicators initiative. So you're participating in all the right things to get everything done right. So feel proud. Looking back on this, I want to look at just now, not only have you reduced emissions by 17%, but what does that translate to in terms of how many tons is that? How many tons?
Yeah, I want to know what
Yes.
happened from 2013 to 2015.
That is primarily Great River Energy, their emission factor.
Okay.
That is the number one reason is that utility got dirtier over that 2-year period.
Okay, just wanted to know,
I'm glad you asked the question I had an
because
answer
it's
for.
2% difference there between 13 and 15.
That's right, and that's from GRE. So there were approximately 28,000 tons of greenhouse gases that you've reduced since 2005. And the primary areas where this has been done, now, first of all, I'm going to jump ahead because of your question, Madam Mayor, and that the utilities and their emission rates are the primary reason that number has gone down, and I'll go into more detail on that. But in terms of just looking at the emissions for electricity for your major facilities, your Key successes are the city garage and youth center. I think it's a 44% reduction since 2005. City Hall, your maintenance center, your 2 fire stations, and I'll have a separate story on potable water, which is a tremendous success story in your city. There's similar reductions when you talk about natural gas conservation that's gone on. But those are the big players that have made a big difference. Now, what we're trying to do here is an apples to apples comparison. I always love that, having the last name of Orange. Where you want to have, if things were the same in 2005, what would it be today? And things aren't. So how do we normalize? And the first thing we normalize for is weather. So there's an analysis about that. If it's extremely hot summer, you're going to pay more for electricity for air conditioning, but the EPA says that only about 5% of electricity consumption is for air conditioning. So you have a little effect on the big part of the pie. In terms of natural gas, it's the opposite. You've got about 80% of natural gas consumption is for heating buildings. So you have a big effect on a much smaller piece of the pie. You add those together, it's not much of an effect. The changes in weather from our 30-year normal do not change the numbers very much. The second point, though, the second area is the electric utility emission factors, and I've already talked about that. They make a big difference. So the red line shows you what would happen if the weather was normal, it didn't change from the 30-year norm, and the higher emission factors from the utilities didn't go down. And you can see your red line isn't so good. Your actual reductions from your facilities is 9%. You can't control the weather and you can't control the utilities, but there's another factor that you do have control over, and that's changes to your facilities, including adding new facilities and upgrading equipment. So to normalize for that, this chart shows you this. The blue shows you all of the facilities that were in place in 2005, square footages for buildings, and the red part of the bar is where you've added, or in some cases subtracted buildings. The Ames Performing Arts Center, the Heart of the City ramp, expansion of your maintenance facility, those kinds of things. And you've lighted more streets, fortunately, with LED bulbs, which made a big difference. So the combination of the blue and the red shows what would happen. Basically, if you take away the red, so you have an apples to apples with 2005, then this is triple normalized, the green dotted line at the bottom. You would have had a 25% reduction because you've added a lot of facilities. But this is good for informational purposes, but your official number is still the blue line, 17% in 2015. Potable water is a big story, and I think, Sue, I think in past presentations, I don't really need to go into great detail on this, right? It's a positive story you all know.
I have shown it.
Okay, good,
yes, too.
good. I won't go into great detail. I'm going to summarize it with this one table, one chart. On the left scale is billions of gallons of potable water that you've produced. The dotted blue line then shows that, fairly flat, 2005 through 2009. And then with your upgrades and using more of the Kramer Quarry water.
Surface water.
Surface water, much cheaper to produce than the deep wells you were using, and you had some terrific sales to surrounding communities, so that blue line takes off. Your production went way up. Then, so obviously, if you're going to use more electricity to do that, but if you do a calculation with the red line that shows you the kilowatt hours per gallon, then you have improved efficiency tremendously. The red line keeps going up. You have improved your efficiency of producing potable water by 62% since 2005. Another congratulations to you as a city. I want to focus now on the bar on your right side of the slide, dealing with the other factors, beginning with liquid fuels now, 10% of the emissions. And this is going to be a focus on your Public Works Department, using diesel, gasoline, and E85 as an alternative fuel. The blue bar shows you the gallons of fuel consumed by Public Works. And that's been, you can see kind of up, kind of down. The red is the portion that when Public Works contracts out to private companies to do normal city operations. That's snow plowing, street repaving, street sweeping, street lighting, trees, and so forth. And there's two stories here I would draw from this. Number one, your total consumption of the fuels has increased by 25% since 2005. And another thing that's changed is that you had about 28% of the fuel was being consumed by private contractors to do the city work. That's almost doubled. It's up to 47% in 2015. That's just how you're choosing to get the work done that needs to be done on city streets. I've skipped over the street lights part of it just for the sake of time. But this slide shows you where the reductions come from. There were, like I said, 27,700 tons of greenhouse gases less in 2015 than were being produced in 2005. Where did they go? And the first bar deals with electric utility emission rate reductions. So the utilities gave you 56% of those reduced tons of greenhouse gases. The light green bar is what you've done with upgrading your facilities, your LED lamps, more efficient. Everything you've done is more efficient, and that's given you 36% of the tonnages. And then finally, the reduction in natural gas, insulating your buildings and the like, is accounting for 9% of the reduction. What does a ton of greenhouse gas look like? Trying to put it into some kind of a way to understand it better. And based upon your citywide greenhouse gas total of whatever that number is, divided by your households, gives you about 18 tons of greenhouse gases per year per household. So using that as a measure, 18 tons, then I did estimates for each year to say, how much are you reducing in 2006, 7, 8, 9, and so forth, and then divided by 18 tons to find out, with your reductions, how many households are you offsetting? Does that make sense to people? Mm-hmm. Okay, so for example, in 2009, 2,400 tons were reduced, and that equals the equivalent of 67 households. So your savings were offsetting the emissions of 27 households. If you add this all up over the 10-year period, then on average, your reductions are offsetting the emissions of 790 average Burnsville households. And that deserves another congratulations. And that's my presentation.
Questions? Thank you. It's always good to measure, and that was one of the things that when we put the sustainability plan in place, we wanted to make sure that we measure our progress. So at least we know and that we are intentional about the work that we're doing, and it's not just a plan that we put in place and then, but what also was very nice, and I thank you, Sue, wasn't your doctoral work in this space of environment?
Madam Mayor, my master's degree is in landscape architecture, but I went back and got a number of certificates and degrees with, in sustainability.
Okay. I thought you were on a path to getting your doctoral degree in sustainability.
I'm still thinking about it, even at my age.
Because I remember talking, so when we were doing the sustainability
Yes.
plan, it was
Yes.
also part, I think you had one of your dissertations was around some of the work that we were doing.
Yes,
So, thank you.
yes.
But the thing is, it is about being intentional, and that was our goal as the council, was to say, if we're going to do this, we're going to be serious about it, we're going to be intentional about it, and that it's going to be measured. Yeah, and so, thank you to staff and to the council for also approving some of this stuff that we had to do. Like the water treatment plant, which is big.
two quick sentences. It's been your investment in the types of equipment that you use to pump the water.
Yes.
So the variable frequency drives that the
Yes.
city has invested in over the last 10 years, and then received rebates that almost pay for all of those drives, has been the
Yeah.
big benefactor. And so we pump a lot of water. On an annual basis, the city spends about $900,000 on water. So it is a low-hanging fruit for us to focus on that. So.
And what people don't understand is that, and I always say this, we're on a hill. Burnsville is a hill, so if you want to get water all the way up to southwest Burnsville, you got to have a lot of power to pump up that hill. And so those are some of the investments that we've made, and thank you. And I know it was tough, but it was also leveraging our resources, leveraging our partnership with our business, leveraging with Savage, and getting all of that in place with regard to our surface treatment plant. Yes.
Well, thanks, great presentation. As a person who loves data, I'm into that level, and I can appreciate it. It's a lot of in-depth information, but the analysis is great, the results are great. I'm curious, without naming other cities in particular, how does that compare? I mean, should we feel great that that level of savings is good, or is virtually every city getting at least that much through all of their efforts? I mean, kind of, where do we stand in comparison?
There are very few cities who've done done the analysis. I've completed Shorewoods, Washington County. I'm doing St. Louis Park now. We've done Burnsville, and I know another consultant did Duluth, but those are the only 5 cities or 4 cities in a county that I'm aware of that have done city operations baseline assessments. I think they're going to be a trend in the future, and it's a part of step 4 in Green Step cities. So, and there's 111 Green Step cities that are hopefully striving for that. So that's the general statement. There's not much data on it, I don't think anybody's accomplished at that rate without. I don't think anybody's done that. Period.
Awesome, well, fantastic, great work by all the departments. We're
Good.
it's paying and the dividend is not just the stats, obviously, but the cost savings to the taxpayers.
The other big thing is that the great partnership and work that we also do with Excel, and what the decisions Excel made to go to combined cycle, the combined,
Cycle,
yes, cycle.
yes.
Yeah.
Incidentally, more of your facilities are relying upon Great River Energy. That's shifting. It used to be about 50-50 in 2005, where your facilities were located within Xcel versus Great River Energy territory, and that's shifting in favor of GRE
Yeah.
by your location decisions.
Okay. Any other thoughts, comments? Thank you very much, Sue. Mr. Orange, thank you so much for coming in. Thank you.
I have.
Oh, that's right. Sue, you have your update on the sustainability.
Madam Mayor, City Council members, just a couple minutes that I'm going to just give you a few updates on the sustainability updates. So I just thought I would go through a little bit about the background, just a couple minutes, so if anybody.
And it's on the website.
It is on the website. The Sustainability Guide Plan is on the website. I think it was back in 2006, we started looking at it, 2007 and 8, a 2-year sustainability review process that the city council looked at.
Yeah.
We had input from a broad base of experts and stakeholders, and we developed 14 priority areas, and we call them best practice areas. In 2009, the city council adopted the Sustainability Guide Plan.
And this went through our governance process.
Yes. Yes, so what I'm going to talk about very quickly this evening is we've already heard about the Minnesota Green Step City Step 4 Award, the Ice Center Waste Reduction Program, resiliency newsletter insert, and then a little bit about that's what happened last year and what is going to be, what we're looking at this year. Ames Center Organics Recycling Program, Comprehensive Plan, water meter readers, and park recycling. So as.
Sue, just
Yes?
so everybody knows that one of the things that also was critical in all of this was the geothermal for the ice center. That helped to reduce. So Steve and his crew from Parks and Natural Resources with the geothermal.
Yes, when you look at the gas on in the previous presentation,
Yeah.
and then the council did a recommissioning study of the
Yeah.
ice center last year, and that is going to take full advantage of the
Yeah.
geothermal to maximize it, so.
Yeah.
Yes, thanks.
It's all
Thank you.
of those little decisions
Yes,
that keep moving
absolutely.
in that direction.
The Minnesota Green Step Cities program. It's a voluntary program run through the MPCA, and it's both assistance and recognition to help cities achieve their sustainability goals. And as we've said, City of Burnsville is a step 4 city. So 111 cities participate in that program, and there are only 6 cities that have reached step 4. And step 4 is about measuring and reporting sustainability indicators. There is going to be a step 5. I see it listed, but there really isn't a lot of information about it. But that step 5 will be that we make goals, sustainability measurable goals, and then to find out what kind of progress we're making toward those goals. But that isn't happening yet, so. Also, the Burnsville Ice Center, great program, just, the Ice Center is collecting organic recycling. We worked with the concession stand to have compostable serviceware, and so you can recycle, so you can compost the serviceware and the food. And that actually has improved the regular recycling, and it's interesting how people, not only do they recycle the organics, they improved recycling the containers, the plastic bottles, cartons, everything like that. And we've improved the education component as far as staff and the public. And just recently, we've added, the program has done so well that we've added more organic containers, recycling containers, and then also added recycling containers to the skate park. Last year, we sent out a climate resiliency newsletter insert. And this insert outlined weather changes, the kinds of impacts that include warmer winters, even though some days you don't hardly believe that, but it is becoming warmer, hotter summers, and more heavy rain and snow. And that is not always a good thing. There are things that happen as far as invasive species because of the warmer winters that come in, and some of the air quality and water quality issues can come with the heavy rains and hotter summers too. And in this insert, it provided steps to be more, so our residents could be more climate resilient. And it also outlines some of the things that would be good to have for an emergency preparedness kit. This year, so we're switching to what's coming up. We are researching the possibility of starting an organics recycling program at the Ames Center. And early this year, we're going to conduct a waste audit so that we can see what is the content of organics and recycling, and how can we pull those out. I just have to mention, we did a waste audit last year for City Hall, And City Hall is recycling at a 76% rate, which is, I mean, that's amazing. So,
I also like the new receptacles where you have just a little, tiny little.
yes, yes, for waste.
For waste.
Big
But a big,
recycling,
big one
yes.
for recycling, and there's a little tiny.
And that's helped, so. And then we'll determine what we need to do to switch into compostable serviceware, and then also educate staff and the public if we move forward with this program. The comprehensive plan is coming up, and that is the long-range plan to incorporate sustainability into each area to provide guidance through the year 2040. So there are communities, some communities don't even have sustainability in the comp plan, but Burnsville is particularly smart in their not to have it as a separate chapter or separate, but we look at it in all the different areas. Water meter readers, that's happening right now, right? Yes. And that will allow the city to better analyze water that's sold versus pumped from the quarry and groundwater wells. And the meter readings will be transmitted with alarm parameters so that we can spot problems right away. And this will help to conserve water. And the last thing I want to talk about is the park recycling. This year, we have been researching possible strategies for recycling in the community parks, and we'll continue to do so and have discussions this year. And we're doing this so that we can divert trash from the landfill. So that is the quick update for sustainability, and if you have any questions, please let me know.
Yeah, Kara.
My question is on the meter readers. You said that since they'll be reporting back daily, they're able to alert you to issues earlier than normal. What types of issues will it alert you to?
Steve.
So I'll take that one. So if we have a water main break,
Yeah.
we'll be able to know on a daily basis how much water is being delivered to the home versus what we're pumping. And we'll know,
The
if we see a
discrepancy.
spike, we'll know that there's a break in the system someplace, and we'll be able to analyze pressures right away to find it. Whereas in the past, we got the readings every 30 days. So 30 days, we'd see, 30 days ago, we had an issue. And so that'll allow us, a lot of water can leak in 30 days. And so that'll allow us there. It'll also allow residents in the future to be able to incorporate some customer portals where they can monitor their own water use and start looking at how they're using water and goals and things like that. And so it'll allow us some more educational tools too, and to work with people on, especially on watering conservation. So it'll give us better feedback on those peak days to know how much is really being used for watering versus just what people need for necessities. So those are the tools that it should be able to give us.
Okay, great, thank you.
One of the stories around that was a family, a couple who would vacation in Florida. And I think they had a break in the wintertime.
Oh,
But,
no.
yeah. And that was a big problem.
I
But-
bet so.
But with this system, we would know and we can alert them and we can fix it, even though that they're out of town. And this will help.
Great, thank you.
Any other? Thank you so much. Great plan. I did, when you sent it, I did send the link to Washington DC. And of course, a lot of the folks at the National League of Cities who also partner with the MPCA on the Green Steps. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, so thank you, Sue.
Thank you.
And thank you, Steve, and the group that does all of this work. Thank you. Because I know when I look at everything, the sustainability plan is incorporated into all of the different functions when it's a development. Are we doing things, and also with construction, with all of the recycled materials that you're using in construction and all of that. Nicely done. Thank you. Okay.
Elizabeth,
Yes.
I have a meeting I have to be at 9 for so I'm gonna leave at some point, just so if I get up and walk out, you know what's going on.
All righty
I'm
then.
sorry, it just kind of went over. I'm compelled to be at this meeting for a client.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so what we're going to do is then, Jenny's going to quickly move through this.
I will move as quickly as I can and try to get you the information I think that we're seeking here. Madam Mayor, members of the council, this is what I would call the comp plan update. So I'm here every quarter reporting to you on the status of the completion of our comprehensive plan update. Last time I was before you was in October, so, and these items were highlighted in your background, but briefly since then, we went through a charrette exercise, and I'll get into a little bit of that on the next slides. Our advisory committee met in November and reviewed those vision plans. There was public input that continued, our online survey still open.
So people know when you say advisory committee, it's not just staff, there is also citizens involved.
Correct, approximately 20, 22
It's always good
individuals.
because somebody might just be listening in and saying, who's in that?
Who are there? Yeah, that's a good point, Madam Mayor. They're members of the public, business communities, nonprofits,
Planning
diverse
commission?
groups, yes, absolutely, the planning commission, schools, et cetera, that are part
Okay.
of that, some of our big businesses, churches. Also, since October, we met with MnDOT and the county on the MRQ interchanges as we get into the future of the MRQ. Those questions have come up, and I'll walk through that. Update on the Parks Master Plan continues. You heard Garrett went through at our last update what was happening with that. So they've done an assessment of the parks and rec programs and have community and stakeholder inputs have started, and that will continue. They also have a survey online for folks that are interested in talking about our parks. Water Resources Management Plan, that update is continued. We've had citizen input, talked about it at the PNRC, and have had updates with you, and the draft plan is under review. So the Parks Master Plan and Water Resources Management Plan are big parts of what goes into the comprehensive plan. And then we've prepared a mastered schedule that I'll walk through real quick that was just passed out. So getting to the future vision areas, real quick, there are 4 focus areas in the comprehensive plan. We've got the Minnesota River Quadrant, Heart of the City, our aging industrial area, and transit-oriented developments.
It's on your,
Is it, you said it was.
Passing them around, did they not?
Oh, did I stop
Somebody-
somebody?
Somebody's bogarting, I mean, like, you
Are
just
you-
passed out,
are
I'm
you-
like, I didn't get anything.
anything.
Like, what are you looking
Okay.
at?
So, in Heart of the City, of course, we're all
Those new
familiar.
council
There's 2 sheets.
Here you go.
You know,
Okay,
those new council members, they just don't get, you gotta pass it
You
on.
have all these computers, then you give me paper.
We're all familiar with Heart of the City, the mixed-use development. We talked a little bit about that tonight. And so what this exercise looked at is the future of Heart of the City, and we didn't focus on the vacant parcels, but what could be, also taking into account the Orange Line stations. There'll be an Orange Line station here at Nicollet and Travelers Trail, and then the other one will be off Burnsville Parkway and Travelers Trail. So some of the land use considerations, the biggest change gets to adding perhaps high-density housing along the outside corridor to support and complement Heart of the City, and then our TOD stops.
boy, then that fits into the
What we
discussion
just talked
earlier
about, so-
about,
This is all coming together nicely, right? So anyways, so what does that look like on a sketch plan? And so, as we get into changing land uses, it's very expensive. How do I say this? The highest and best use, highest values are usually multifamily properties or expensive retail along the 42 corridor. Those are our highest tax-paying uses. And so in order for something that's existing, all of this is existing, especially when we look at HOC2 further to the west, what could that be that is the best ROI for a property owner or developer to get to? And so, of course, high-density housing is the obvious choice, again, coupled with the new urbanism development and the transit-oriented development. So that's partially why the group had suggested high-end housing where these existing single-level office warehouse buildings are in a future scenario. And
just
you'll
let people know what's in there right now.
Yeah, they're single-level office warehouse
Office
buildings with
warehouse.
great views of downtown, right, on
Yeah.
that
Yeah,
southeast
it's a
corner.
nice little,
They're
it's
great,
where my
but-
business used to, when I had my business was located there, I had a gorgeous view.
But long-term, think what
Mm-hmm.
that could be for Heart of the City when we think about what your vision is and the city's vision is for that area.
Yeah, Dan?
Just a quick question. When I first looked at this, thought came to mind. We're talking about strictly possibilities, right? But we're having discussions about ideas for redevelopment that affects a lot of property owners. And we're kind of doing it in a vacuum with our own staff and our outside group of
20 people.
20 people. How many of the property owners involved in all of these were invited in to kind of see and participate at the front end of this discussion? To see, actually, the one that really sticks out is the
Is
one that you've
KA.
got on, is KA,
Because
that
it's Gateway and
gateway, right?
Travelers and
So
all
I'm
of that
looking
is
there
KA.
going, I like that idea, but if I'm them and I own that property, I'm thinking, you're having a discussion about redeveloping a very large office park that
Yeah.
I have owned for many years and developed, years ago. It would be nice if I was involved in the front end of that discussion, just so I'm not blindsided after the fact and told, oh, by the way, did you see the new vision? It happens to rezone and redevelop your building. And I say that as a blanket, like, there's a lot of properties. We've done this before, and it never hit me until this cycle, because we're now really looking at a lot of redevelopment, which is great. It's the right discussion. But it involves a lot of property owners, where we're talking about the future of their property. So were they all invited in to this discussion and involved in, at least to be a part of it at the front end?
Councilmember Keeley, we're at the very conceptual end.
Totally get it.
In our experience and our consultants' experience, it's easier to give folks something to react to. People know what they like and they don't like, and
Yeah.
we've been through these kind of discussions before. You know what you like when you see it, but you don't. So they have not been involved, engaged at this point. This is our third meeting that we've had on this, a year and a half into this. We certainly anticipate to have separate meetings with each neighborhood on these focus areas, and these are drafts. And so the advisory committee reviewed this, and they were supportive of this. At the CEO forum, I know Kraus
Yeah.
Anderson was there.
Yep.
And they saw
Dennis
that.
Deisner was present, and I was going to offer that, Jenny.
And he
but,
was generally fine with that, is my understanding.
Yeah,
I'm skipping.
and I mean, we're looking to the future, but it's like the heart of the city. We had a lot of property owners, and then when involved, and, everybody's gonna like the vision, and some aren't, and, but, you move forward, but you also have to do a changing the zoning.
Well, not necessarily. The heart of the city zoning is a mixed-use zoning that
That's right.
allows all different types of things. So
Yeah.
the zoning isn't
But
necessarily
we've never had
changing.
mixed-use zoning before in Burnsville, so we had to,
When we did Heart of the
Yeah.
City, yes, and we have several spots that have mixed
Yeah.
zoning right now.
Yeah.
So the zoning may not change, and we're talking about land use on a broad scale, but
Yeah.
in order to hone in on the number of people that are gonna live there, because we have requirements within our TOD to have so much density and so many housing units, we have to somewhat articulate what this could be to satisfy the requirements of the Met Council.
yeah.
The
Dan.
HOC two also has the mixed-use zone?
Yes, well, it's HOC
the
two.
purple.
Yeah.
It's HOC, which
Yeah.
is mixed
Okay,
use.
but I'm talking about HOC two, because you're kind of in HOC two there
Yeah.
with this as well.
HOC
See,
two
this
is
is right
this
there.
part.
Yeah,
And then
it's
the
right
other
there.
side of, the south
it's
side of.
Pleasant
Yes.
and over.
Burnsville
And over
Parkway,
here.
right there,
Yeah.
right, and those purple corners are,
Yeah.
Whoops. Now I did it. There we go. So HOC two is part of a mixed-use zoning district. HOC one, HOC, it's called Heart of the City.
Yeah.
and- Okay. So that's already in place. What we also talked
Yeah.
about.
could I?
Dan?
I would like to finish my point, if I could.
Okay.
So, I'm putting myself in the shoes of any one of these business owners. So, at some point after there's been meetings by the city with an outside consultant and these 20 people, and they've talked about my business or my property over a period of months, and then we get to a point where we've got this concept vision. Now I'm invited into this meeting, or a meeting, right, or a neighborhood meeting, or group meeting of the businesses, and I'm presented this. The first thing that comes to my mind is, wow, why did, geez, thanks for waiting until, you got this concept together before you finally invited me into this discussion. It's kind of like, if I'm going to be a stakeholder, because you're talking about the land that I own a piece of property on, I don't think it's in the best interest of getting involvement and
Buy-in?
and buy-in when you actually sort of come in. after it's all sort of laid out, because really now I'm sitting there in a meeting, and this isn't critical of staff, this is more critical of the process. And I think something that, even though the consultant says, now you can do this, and then you can bring it to them, because then they have something to chew on and to react to, I think therein lies the problem. I'm now reacting to something rather than, why didn't you just invite me in to watch or be a part of it at the front end while those discussions were having? So then when you sit down with my area, zone, or whatever, I feel like I've been a participant in the process all along. And if I certainly had an issue with where the direction was going, I could have raised my hand, or as you pointed out, there's an opportunity for anyone attending the meetings to have some time at the end of those meetings to be able to voice their opinion. So then if I'm one of those and I have some concerns over what the future of what you want to do with my particular property, I have an opportunity to voice it then, and then of course have it at that future meeting. But if I'm sitting at that future meeting and months of work has been done and then it's being presented to me, I kind of feel like I missed the bus on steering the direction or getting my voice in. And then I feel like, well, how am I going to turn this around? I don't agree with this, right? So I'm coming in late to the party. At least that's the way I would feel if I was one of these landowners. So my suggestion is earlier in the process that and maybe we're already notifying them that we're having these discussions and inviting them to it, but that's really what I'm getting at, is get some buy-in earlier on in the process by the people affected by this. And it's great that KA, because at the CEO, but it's also KA, and it's also Dennis, who tends to have a good, bigger picture approach and mentality to things, but he's not an example of every landowner. There may be some that have very closed minds to these types of things. But we could open those minds if we got them earlier in the process. So I just think I feel very strange that we're talking about rezoning, and I'm going through this, seeing all of this proposed. I mean, it's pure concept, but proposed. The concept to us is not concept to the landowner who's not part of the process until after the fact, and then gets invited in and feels like, whoa, well, when did all this happen? And now you're showing it? Well, how am I going to stop this train if I disagree with it? Where if you give them a chance early on, they at least can voice early on, and then they know it's coming, they've been invited in. There's no criticism of the process. They still might not like the outcome, but at least they can't criticize the process. So that's my 2 cents.
Yeah.
I mean, this applies in the business world all the time. I mean, I feel like this is kind of sort of a basic fundamental relationship building and project management type of step that we need to take. But that's me.
And I agree with what you're saying, because when we did the Heart of the City, we had bumpers involved, Napa, was it the Union Gas Station owner?
Texaco.
Texaco.
That might cost them him.
Yeah, and so, and then they were able to make decisions and decide to sell their property or to go through the eminent domain process with us, because, and then we were able to help them because they
Yeah.
went through that process, removed bumpers and all
Yeah.
of that. But they were involved, whether they liked it or not, but they saw that we were helping them also for their business to succeed, like the moving of bumpers to be right on the freeway, and they liked that.
And the easy fix is just invite them to attend and watch and give them,
Yeah.
at the end of the meeting, a chance to voice an opinion. But I just think they need to be included.
Okay,
Well,
yeah,
If I
Jenny,
can, Madam Mayor, the comp plan is more than just these
Yeah.
4 things I'm going to show you. So
Yeah.
these are done
Good.
for now, so there won't be ongoing discussions about these. But what we can do is certainly have those neighborhood meetings sooner rather than later. I mean, there is time for input, absolutely. And so we're moving on. We've got 10 chapters to get done. That's about 1 a month for this year. And so this is a very small part of one of those chapters.
and perhaps
So-
a work group of people that can
owners.
work on those things and
Yes.
have the planning commission chair be, so they, like we did with all the other stuff too.
And I would also add too, if I can, this isn't a redevelopment plan. This is our comprehensive plan, which is bigger kind of land use issues. And there will be, we're not rezoning anything today. There will be an implementation plan that will say, if we want these land uses to happen, then these are the
Then the
things
work
that are
group
gonna happen.
comes into place.
There will be many public hearings, many process, and I just want to be clear, and you bring up a very good point. We're not forcing anybody to do anything they don't want to. People can keep their buildings as is. The zoning is in place today for them to do this with the mixed-use development all the way through HLC two. So
Yeah.
that's not changing. So it's good that you bring that up so that we can clarify that with folks. And we certainly do intend to meet with everybody so they do know when they see this plan, what the vision could be for their property.
And that communication piece is important, and I really do, and like I said, it's nothing with the staff or anything, it's nothing wrong, it's just the process, and government, when government works, or when government is taking action and doing things, people who aren't involved in government don't look at it the same way we do. And so what I wanted to try and relay is an expression of, I think this would bother me if I was a landowner, right? And you're talking about the potential future of my land. And I hate to have to backpedal and go, no, this is just a concept vision and doesn't require you to do anything, right? But this is part of what, the future could be, if you'd like to participate, if you'd like to, maybe an exit strategy and redevelop your land and all that kind of stuff. And that's all well and good, but I would just want them to be told that same thing at the front end of the process, and here, we're working on this, and we've invited you in to be a part of it. So.
Understood.
Jen.
And then lastly, on this, with Heart of the City, is further on the west side, we've had some traffic issues with the way the frontage road Aldrich comes up here. So with the station, Orange Line Station here, the circles you see are half-mile stations, which are considered the TOD stations. There's an opportunity to perhaps redevelop some of this older stuff to the west and realign this frontage road. So I think it's Girard, is that, I don't know, Steve, if you know what street, but the one
Girard is
street
further
over from the
down?
Pines, and line this intersection up over here, which will help with the traffic issues right up here, and then perhaps have some high-density housing that matches the apartments that are to the north, and then the commercial, I think, continues down here. So redoing what's on the west, perhaps. Now, that would take a rezoning at some point in the future, but there's opportunities there, we thought, with the buildings that were there and how they're laid out for them to be improved at some point in the future. Moving on to the aging industrial, which has now been renamed the East Cliff Road Business Park. When we met with our consulting team, they did an analysis of this area, and going into this, and I think this was the direction, I think, from the council as well, is looking at this as redevelopment. What can people do with their buildings? What new uses could go there? We've had these discussions over the years. Looking at the economic analysis of the area today, this part of town serves a particular business need and has a lot of employees in it. I think the comparable was, there's as many employees in this Lark industrial area as there is in the South Cross industrial area. And it's aged, it's tired, but it has a purpose in Burnsville. And I think when we started down this, we were thinking kind of more like, what could it be that it's not, that is much different than today? But what the consensus and everything is pointing to is it does serve a purpose. How can we make it look better aesthetically? Add trees, add sidewalks, perhaps trails, but not necessarily change the uses. There may be an obsolete building here or there. Big challenges with parking there. We don't have 24-foot clear height ceilings in those industrial buildings, which are in demand, but we do have a lot of small businesses there. We have some higher incomes, higher than you would expect. And even though there's for lease signs on a lot of these properties, there's no space in those buildings. We believe that's for marketing purposes to get them to look at other spaces elsewhere. So that's kind of the direction where our aging industrial discussion has led us.
And Jenny, one of the things in just looking and doing some research, startups, in talking to Maggie and some of the property owners down in this area, this is a great location for startups, skunk works, entrepreneurship, and we can certainly drive the economy on providing them with a place for those startups, those entrepreneurs, and especially STEM. And I'm thinking a great relationship with the school district, with all of the robotics that's coming out of there, the talent that's coming out of there, and also the 3D printing technology and some of those students who are really getting into all of this. And if there is skunk works going on in that area, there'll be and you're designing a walking area, easy for them to walk to where they need to go.
Correct.
With startups, entrepreneurship, STEM, then we can drive that kind of business, economic vitality.
Exactly. We're having a discussion on this piece of this with the Economic Development Commission tomorrow evening. So as we start to engage that commission on economic development topics in the comp plan, that this
Yeah.
is part of that. So went a different direction than we had thought when we had
Yeah.
started it. And then lastly is the Minnesota River Quadrant, and so I've got a series of 4 slides that were put together. So this is the existing land use plan, and I think you're all familiar with this, but we show closure of the freeway landfill, KMM's mixed-use development when the mining stops and the quarry fills with water. We had kind of a medical tech campus here was in our old vision, and then kind of some commercial and then general industrial here. You'll see the 13-5 interchange and a future connection here of Cliff Road, and then a new interchange at 118th Street. This is the summary of the current vision. We're looking at changing some of these land uses. They're highlighted in yellow. So I'll just kind of start from the north and go to the south. When we think of the freeway landfill, well, we know more than we did back in 2008 when we did that plan, but in a sense, we know less because now this is going to the EPA, so we don't really know how this is going to end up. So what the 2 groups talked about was, what's our best vision for that area? Highest and best use, what would be ideal? And the result of that was to get people down to the river. We're a river city and people don't know it. It's a huge amenity. So adding a residential component back into the northerly end of this plan. So also our best case scenario is to have that garbage move completely off-site, right? Get the trash completely remediated out of the floodway and out of that kind of scenic area. It can be something else. I don't know if it'll go that way, but today we don't know. We have
Until-
nothing that tells us it can't. So this is our vision, and that's why we're doing this. So that northerly portion adds some residential here along Office Industrial Park along the highway. That still seems to be a need in Burnsville and certainly is a nice buffer to the highway. Nothing really changes with the KMM plan. It's a mixed-use development, had residential, will continue to have residential and mixed-use retail, office, warehouse, industrial in the corner. And then the STEM area, or medical office campus, that never really took off. That market has shifted so much that.
But if you do the Lark Industrial, it might
It certainly could.
stimulate.
It certainly
Yeah.
could. But the idea was that this would be more general industrial and not so targeted anymore in our vision. So that's what this looks like with the change when we add residential. This basically stays the same. Pink is mixed use, by the way. So this would include residential and commercial, and then this is just general industrial.
The residential, Jenny, talk more about that, because if it it's a super fund.
Correct.
And all the garbage isn't moved, then what?
If all the garbage is not moved.
Yes.
Then that could leave us with either a smaller strip of residential here.
Yeah.
But the challenge you get is the marketability of who
Yeah.
wants to live next to a landfill.
But what
So-
would we do with that if we want to bring people to the river? And if you remember back when we had the amphitheater, it would have been a park.
Correct.
That'll bring people to enjoy that amenity and all of that.
Certainly.
Because the thing is, I think we need to have 2 thoughts in that. One, if the garbage isn't removed, and the other is when it is removed. Because I like the housing part, because that'll bring people.
Correct, Madam
to
Mayor.
enjoy.
And I think if the thought here was that let's keep to our best vision until we hear otherwise. We'll have to do a comprehensive plan amendment when the next 2020 census data comes out. And then if we have to amend this northerly vision because it can't be housing for some reason, we certainly can amend the comp plan then too. We can have 2 plans now. It's just
And that can be part of our implementation discussion too. Each chapter will have an implementation, so that could certainly be rolled
Yeah.
into that. But I think it's in our best interest to keep one vision now and let all the agencies know, this is our vision, this is what we want. The EPA has said they would work with communities, so having this in our comp plan as our vision, I think puts us in a better, my colleagues here can correct me, but I believe that puts us in a better place with them, with us
So
telling
we're
the
putting it
agencies
out
what
there
we
to the
want.
universe and say, make this so.
This is what we would like in our best case scenario. If we don't ask, we're not going to
Yeah.
get it, so.
If we provide a lower vision, we'll get a lower vision.
No,
I mean,
I
there are
understand.
options, there are options. We want to say this is what's best for the community in this area so
Yeah.
that they may not get there, but at least they're pushing towards that vision, because otherwise we will end up with a pile of garbage right there with
Yeah.
nothing useful.
No,
So,
and that's,
yeah.
I would much rather see people there so that they can enjoy that wonderful asset.
And I think that's been our approach.
But at the same time, I don't know, over 20 years of trying to get something done with that property, so.
We'll know more in 5 years than we know today,
Yeah.
but for today, I think this is the best, our best foot forward. The other thing here is the road alignments, and so we spent some time, I mentioned before that we met with MinDOT and the county on the road alignments, and what does this look like? And so this is our current plan, showing a future interchange here, Black Dog is here, and then Cliff Road is here. So we're in the process of trying to figure out the
No more
timing.
Embassy Road, huh? That at one point it was going to come
Yeah.
from Cliff and go north?
Although it
If
was
you're
going to
gonna
go all the way like a
Yeah.
frontage road, I think. What we're trying to figure out now is timing and implementation, when things are going to be cleaned up. How can we put the roads kind of in a general place so they only have to be built once
Yeah.
as things are phased in? And so this scenario, and we have not come to conclusion on this yet, by the way. This is still a work in progress here. But what we're thinking is that, and a lot of this depends on kind of what we can happen with Cliff Road and the timing. We may need, or may be able to get by with one kind of main thoroughfare through KMM's redevelopment property. They may go first before the land, well, maybe we'll know more about this and it may take time, but, and then also this future interchange, what's going to drive that development's going to drive this future interchange. And so how does the timing of all this work? Is there frontage road on part of this? We're still trying to figure that out. And Steve, I don't know if you want to elaborate more on the transportation part of this.
I think the big thing that came to light is depending on the development scenario of the landfill area. Number one, the original vision of the single interchange may not work. There may be more traffic there than a single interchange can handle.
Yeah.
And also from a marketability of the property to the north, losing the Black Dog interchange
Yeah.
may devalue the opportunities at that property. And so we're trying to balance those things and think, again, there's a lot of unknowns with what's going to happen with freeway
And that's
landfill, freeway
117,
dump. Yes,
right?
yep,
117.
correct. And so we're looking at those, and so what may result from the comp plan is that we need to take a little bit deeper study at the single interchange option, and is it actually a viable option depending on the scenarios? And we need to be a little more informed on how we lay this out, because we think KMM and some other areas may develop in advance. We certainly want to make sure we have the right roadway corridors identified, so that we don't have to go back later on. And so we think there's going to have to be some more discussion there. The state and county have been very instrumental in helping us move this along as far as what is realistic and what isn't. And then also looking at, we've always thought the new interchange might cost too much to ever do. Well, the reality is upgrading Black Dog and Cliff to meet the future needs might actually cost more than a new interchange. And so there's a couple of different schools of thought there that
Okay.
we need to make sure we look at where our smart dollars are spent, because if it costs us more to upgrade
Yeah.
Cliff and Black Dog and they don't meet our purposes,
Yeah.
why wouldn't we invest in so that's, this comp plan is headed down a little more detailed transportation path in this area than we had information for in the past too, so.
Well, that's good, especially when we're working on the bridge. Would MinDOT look at that and, as all of this is being done and the bridge work is being done, because it's really close to the bridge
The
work?
bridge is being done so not to preclude any of our options. And so they've looked at what the potential new interchange location would be, and they've designed it such that we could have that in the future with the new bridge work that's being done.
That's good.
Or still have Black Dog and Cliff. And so our options are being preserved by the bridge work. They're not necessarily helping the situation out from an improvement standpoint, but they're not precluding us from an option once we determine what the best option is, and so that's the good news there.
Okay, so what everybody takes away from this is that we don't know that we're going to close down Black Dog right now.
It could change.
But there is an option for 117th. But
gonna
we're
look
still
at
going to
what's-
keep Cliff.
Exactly. We're gonna look at what's the best for the community and the property owners in that area to,
Long-term.
long-term. And
Okay.
that might be something a little different than what we thought it was 10 years ago,
Yeah.
based on what we know now.
Okay, good. And what's nice is that while we're working on the bridge, and MinDOT is aware of all of that, so how those dollars then get put in place and the design for whichever.
So,
One last comment
Interchange.
on this and transportation. We anticipate there being a future Orange Line stop in here. If there's a lot of development here, it may be a good spot to have a stop on the Orange Line. So that's something that was recommended by the county when we met with them. Okay, moving on. I've taken up more than my 15 minutes here, but we've also put together a schedule. And so there's a lot of moving parts here, and this is gonna sound really weird, but it kind of started with the police construction project and room availability to determine when we can have the council chambers for our advisory committee meetings. So now we've got dates for 2017, that the 2017 calendar is done, so we started with those dates. And then we've plugged in meeting topics. So, and this will be put on our website, you were the first to see this. On the left is what has already happened, so we know what discussions have taken place. And then, of course, we're here tonight. Tomorrow's our EDC commission, where we're gonna get some input on the East Cliff Road Business Park, introduce the MRQ and the Heart of the City plan to them. And then the next advisory committee meeting's on January 30th. And then I'm gonna go over the schedule with them, and then we're gonna get into future land use and community design. That's a whole chapter of the comp plan, so we're gonna get into that. And I just wanna point out that that will include the Burnsville Center area as part of land use discussion. That was been brought up by several people, to me and probably to you too, but that certainly is part of our comp plan discussion. And then the EDC will continue its discussion. So I don't necessarily want to read through all of these, but you'll see as you look at this, then we'll be talking about housing at one meeting, and then economic development at another meeting. Then we're going to get into parks and transportation and water resources. So this is an evolution of all of the components of the comp plan coming together, kind of put to paper with our timeline so you can see where we are. This is very tentative. The further out we are, kind of the more things may change, but this does have all kind of the tasks put to paper here. This does not include the community outreach plan. I handed that out at the last meeting, and other public engagement. These are just kind of the established meetings with committees and the commissions.
Okay. Questions for Jenny?
Well, thank you for this timeline and the detail, so we can really kind of see the whole map, right?
Yeah.
Of where
Correct.
we're going and each stop along the way, and when that subject is going to be covered. This is, was this put together recently as a result of, or was this already done moons ago and it just was brought to us? I mean, I don't know if this is something that you normally did in your process, to do this sort of timeline with all these subjects laid out, or was it in response to sort of a request on our part for more detail?
Councilmember Keeley, this is what we started out with, just a general
remember that
timeline
one.
of things were gonna
Right.
happen.
Sorry, this is the one.
This was asked for by me a month or so ago.
Good, good ask.
Maybe longer,
This is
so-
really,
Yeah.
so this came from the Hosington Keller.
Kogler, yeah,
Kogler
they're our
project.
consultant, and then I
Yep.
gave them the dates that we had the room availability, and I asked for what's gonna be talked about at each one of those dates, now that we know when we're meeting, and so this is what they had put together for us, so.
Excellent, this is really good, thank you.
And the other thing, in doing this, and because it was on my calendar and I couldn't make a couple of the meetings because I had other meetings, but for us, if we want to come and listen and see, and the process, members of the council, this is something we can do.
Yes.
Yep, Madam Mayor, thank you very much for reminding me. That was on my list of highlights. The meetings are open to the public.
Yep.
We have had citizens at the last two meetings, and so we've opened up a citizens comment period at the end of our agendas. We've added that, so if they have comments, certainly they can state their comments. These are published as city
Yeah.
council meetings, so anyone to all of you can
Yeah.
certainly show up
We
as
just
well.
have
We're-
to make sure that
we're covered there.
it's already published, so the the public knows that if three of us are there, it's okay.
Yep, Michelle takes care of
Yeah.
that, so you're welcome to attend.
Yeah.
Yep, thank you for the reminder.
Anything else? Any comments? Thank you, Jenny. Nicely
you.
done.
Thank you. It's coming together.
Yeah, okay. We're at roundtable. And the first item on roundtable is our governance policy and the all-day work session. And members of the council, you got my email. My concern is that you've all seen that we have a huge agenda. And the purpose of an all-day work session is a time for the council and staff to work on the issues. We have new council members. We're going to walk through our governance. And we don't need a consultant to be there. So if during that time you believe that you want a consultant, then we make that decision afterwards. But for the all-day work session, I'm suggesting that we work through, you will get in your background the policies of the governance, all of the elements that have gone into place, so that you understand what our role is and what our role is in relationship to staff. And that if there is anything out of that that you don't like, I would say that we also ask Heather and staff to make available to all of our department heads and to each and every one of you the book, Boards That Make a Difference by Dr. John Carver that I wrote to you about. Then you have it, you can read it, and if you think there's something that you want a consultant later on, then we can do that. But I don't think it's appropriate to have a consultant at our all-day work session when we have a huge agenda. We can work through this, and then we can also make some changes, make amendments, and then we can have staff bring it forward like everything else that we do. Any objections to that,
I
Bill?
just want to clarify. We're not having a discussion about changing anything about our system at that all-day work session. All you're doing is presenting, and that if we the
need to,
factual
yes.
design.
Yeah, and that and we may also, because may say that we need to make an amendment, and then we direct staff, just like everything else that we do, direct staff. If you don't want to do it then, we can do it here. I'm comfortable with anything that we do,
Yeah,
but
I'm
we
not-
walk through it.
Well,
But we can walk through it.
Then I'll want a consultant if we're going to look at changing anything.
We're not
because-
going to change anything. If you read the book,
No, I'm just saying, if it's
Then-
informational only for the benefit of essentially the new people, then I'm totally agreeable
Okay.
with what you said. But if it's
If we
up
do
for
any
discussion
amendments?
to begin to discuss changing the system at the all-day work session, which I think is inappropriate given all the stuff we have to cover, but if that's so, then I think we need to have a consultant come in.
then
because
if
I
we're
want-
going to have a consultant, remember the consultant will be our consultant. Then I would say we can make that decision at the all-day work session that we put out an RFP, or we can ask the Carver organization to submit to us any of the consultants that have been, so
Elizabeth,
those are things that we can talk about.
I'm still not clear. Is it informational only about our design for the benefit of the new people, or are you saying that there will be further discussion about changing our model?
Not changing the model, but
Changing
perhaps,
any part of what we do, our process up till that day?
so this is what I can say to you. We will walk through the governance agenda.
Okay.
Okay? And I will explain, and you can have the book and read it. But if we want to amend any policies, just like anything else, we can bring it back here. We can ask staff to put it on a work session. Just
So
like
let me
we
just
do
summarize.
amendments
Wait.
to our ends and outcomes.
So what
No
you're
different,
What you're saying is that you're going to, it's informational,
yes.
but if you decide, or somebody, one of the council people decide that we want to look at changing it, then we'll schedule.
Amendment.
Schedule Well, amendment is a change.
Sure,
So then we'll schedule it at a work session.
absolutely. We can bring it right here and have it on TV. I'm open to that. I like that, matter of fact. So, open and transparent.
Correct.
Yeah.
Again, I'm just
Okay.
trying to clarify what
Yeah.
you
No,
were saying, what was
Yeah.
presented.
So, is everybody okay? We walk through all of this without having a consultant?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, direction to staff, no consultant. Okay, enforcement of sign ordinance during construction project. County Road 42 and 35W. Steve?
Madam Mayor, members of the council, this is a quick check-in with you. As you're aware, during large construction projects, historically, the city council has directed staff to suspend enforcement of our sign ordinance during construction 13 and 5, Burnsville Parkway projects, because of the great impact to our businesses, which allows them to do some on-site temporary signage to direct people to their businesses and things of that nature. The city actually has adopted a policy 2.070, which actually gives city staff the ability to suspend that. But we like to check in with you before we do that, even though staff has that ability to make sure that what we're thinking of that makes sense for a project is what the council envisions too. And then remembering too that this is a flexible process. I believe 13 and 5 we actually modified after we did the initial
Yeah.
based on feedback we
That's
got from the
right.
businesses.
Yeah,
So I
the
think I
second
want
year.
to say that too is once we do this, doesn't mean it can't change, because we're going to talk just real quickly about the 35W Bridge project, which was supposed to be done last summer, was delayed. Remembering that this project will close down directions of 42 over 35W for several weeks in each direction. It's a total of a 9-week project roughly, with a 5-week closure in one direction and a 4-week closure in the other direction. And when that closure happens, that substantial amount of traffic in that direction is going to have to find alternate routes. That has a trickle-down impact on our businesses of that area. We've actually, this has been reviewed with the chamber and many groups, and the council saw a presentation on it last year. I think everybody's supportive of MnDOT and Dakota County's plan, that it's the least impactful plan on the businesses.
Yeah.
That doesn't, though, help them during that 9-week period. Still, there's still impacts. And so, under our policy, there's 2 elements that we'd be looking at. Is number 1, what is the timing of allowing this temporary signage to go in place? And typically, unless council directs us otherwise, staff would look at timing it approximately 2 weeks before the project start. That's when the county typically starts putting out advance notice signage. We would want that to be synchronized, in that we don't want to have that confusion. The county signage goes out first, and there's no ability by businesses to start putting out signage. People wonder what's going on. Same thing, the businesses start putting out signage, and there's no county signage yet, and they get confused. Why are they putting out detour signs? What's going on? So staff would propose roughly 2 weeks before the project start date is set, which looks like it's going to be sometime in April. Businesses would be allowed to start placing sign if they choose. Not all businesses choose to do this. I'd say, 20% of the businesses maybe in the 13 and 5 project did it, but we want to make the tool available to them if they want to do that. So that's the first thing and then after the project's done, typically we ask that signage is down within about a week of the project being complete and everything being open. So just from a timing standpoint, any objection to us following that procedure?
Dan?
Well, I believe it was me that brought this item forward, and thank you so much, Steve, for bringing the map and articulating essentially what the request is. I believe in the past, the start of construction, it was loosely interpreted, but it was really when we set the policy, that it was when construction started. In other words, when streets were blocked off and equipment and manpower was coming in, that's when they were able to then deviate from our current sign ordinance. We suspended it, and they were allowed to do some things to help draw attention, let people know, hey, we're open during construction, go this way, take this road, whatever. And that moving that to time when those signs of noticing of the construction starts gives the businesses the ability to be proactive and say, during construction, our store's open and we're down here, take a right here, whatever it might be. So I support this. I believe it's the right move, and it helps our business community and the businesses. And retail Main and Main Street in Burnsville is on 42, and so this is going to be a nasty impact kind of construction project to a whole lot of businesses densely populated along 42, both directions. And so I think this is the right thing to do, to allow those, whoever chooses to do, to be able to take some action to let people know that they're going to be open during construction and take this road or that road or whatever to get there.
Yeah, and I have to say that I have to thank our staff. With 13 and 5 difficult, but there were changes that were made when we heard from our businesses, but also on the Parkway and Nicollet. And remember, we did the Parkway and then we did Nicollet, and we had the same process, but I do like the fact that, when does it end, when the signs? Because we had one issue on Nicollet. So once people know that, okay, you can only have your signs up until this date, and once the date is done, your sign better go away.
Yes.
Yeah.
We got to go.
But staff has done a wonderful job. And Steve, we did a bridge work on 42 some years back. Do you remember which bridge was that, Jenny?
Well, I think
It-
42 was
42.
resurfaced.
Yeah, it was resurfaced.
In the last 10
This
years.
is an
Yeah.
actual redecking of the bridge.
Yeah.
So the deck, the original deck underneath the bituminous or the surface needs
Yeah.
to be redone. And though, in order to do that, that's obviously a significant impact. And then in addition to that, they're going to be extending the turn lane onto
Yeah.
35
Yeah.
northbound, which will allow Aldrich to be less
Yeah.
impacted every time that they're the stoplight
Yeah.
there, cars line up through that intersection. So
But my
those are the
point
two
is
components.
that staff, the county and MinDOT did a great job in also notifying everybody. And then we had part of that work was done at night.
And they'll be doing everything they can in this respect too. The chamber has already engaged the county on how do we deliver messages to the business? How do we develop kind of
Yeah.
some toolkits for businesses that are small to be able to notify, some templates, map templates, things like that that they can distribute digitally. So this one will probably have the largest digital effort of any project we've ever had in Burnsville as far as pushing out information, retweeting, Facebook posting, taking advantage of all the social media to also reach and having the city and the county and the state have a coordinated effort on that too, along with the chamber. So it's going to have those levels too. The other question that we want to get some general guidance on, and again, this may have to change because once we start seeing the detour, we'll know where the traffic is actually going and what, there are times that businesses outside of what we think the project area are actually impacted because detour routes are there, or we find out that their primary access to their business went through that project area. And so staff has proposed essentially a business area that's bounded by County Road 5 on the west side, McAndrews on the north side, all the way over to 35E, and then comes down and picks up a portion off of Plymouth of the businesses, and then back down south of 35E basically to Buck Hill Road in that intersection. We think based on the detour routes, those are the areas of businesses that'll be most impacted based on what the county's proposed for their detour routes. So we would generally propose that as our area that would allow the temporary signage. Now, the community development staff, code enforcement staff may have to look at this and modify it slightly based on what they think is practical. One of the things that can get challenging is on County Road 5, for example, you allow businesses on one side of 5 to have temporary signage, and right across the street, they can't have temporary signage. That creates an enforcement nightmare for staff, and so Jenny's staff will take a look at that. So it may go a tier over onto 5 and some of those streets when they look at what's practical from an enforcement standpoint. And we try to work with the businesses too, not to be. Jenny, do you have anything you want to add about that?
No, that's all.
Okay.
I mean, I can see us extending 5 to the west to include Nutmeg
Maybe this first
and that
tier,
strip
yeah,
mall.
this
Yeah,
area in
yeah,
here potentially, yep. So.
That goes to our trade area.
But this would be kind of our starting point. Again, we would recognize that once this project takes off, there may be dynamics we haven't anticipated, and staff will try to, the reason the council approved the policy the way it was is so that staff
You
didn't have to
have
come
the
back to a future
flexibility.
meeting.
Yeah.
The city engineer is authorized to change those limits based on actual impacts. And you made that change
Yeah.
several years ago to
Yeah.
make sure that we didn't have to have businesses wait for 2 weeks in
That's
between
right.
meetings or something of that
Yeah.
nature, so.
And we wanted our staff to respond timely, if you remember,
Yep.
to our business problems, and that's how we got that. So
Ultimately,
that when it happens, just do it.
ultimately, we want to err to the,
To be larger.
to
Yeah.
be larger, just to have no impact and no complaints. even if that means a few people that really weren't affected through some signs, well, big deal. Success if there are no complaints from businesses and people are getting around and getting those businesses. Some of
Actually,
those,
the
like,
detour area is not that bad. I mean, a lot of us in Burnsville on weekends
I mean, if you're coming
take
down.
those back roads and not foot.
Sure. For instance, if you're coming down 35 south, 35W, and you want to get to Nutmeg or any of those businesses on the west side, my question is, what signage on the interstate will say exit here for County
They'll be
Road
pulling
5
them to
and
5,
42
yeah, so
businesses?
the state
right?
will have that plan in place of exiting early and trying to get as much traffic to go around the area as possible to start with. So
Yeah.
we'll have the primary detour, and then there'll be secondary detour routes. And then we also will have those who are very familiar with the city using their own detour routes. And those become the problematic ones because that's when we find out if there's a neighborhood street or a residential street potentially that gets used.
Sure.
And we'll have to react to that accordingly too. And
It is
so-
a water balloon,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
When you squeeze it off here, just over there.
Exactly, it
Yeah.
goes someplace. So.
And remember, you did that down on 13, which was really nice. So MnDOT had all of those signs, so people knew how to take the frontage road to get to those businesses.
Yes.
So that was nice, and I see the same thing
So we'll
happening.
work the same way. We wanted to check in with you. This is where we're going to start. If we have issues or hear things, please let staff know. And you've set it up so we can react pretty quickly to making changes. And but we want to have a basis and have the council have an understanding of where we're going to start at least, and then we'll go from there. So
Okay,
that's all I have.
thank you. Very nicely done.
Excellent,
Thanks.
thank you.
Yeah,
We don't have to
everybody's
change
okay
anything,
with
right?
that?
There's
This is
nothing
in-
for the council to change. We
Our
just
policy
wanted-
actually is written such that we can allow this at the start of
Yeah.
notice of the signs, construction signs, approximately 2 weeks, and just spread the word that way, right?
Madam
Okay,
Mayor,
Heather?
Councilmember Keeley, this was on our draft agenda for the all-day work session, so I'll take it off then, if everyone's comfortable with it.
Yeah.
Yep, the policy gives staff that discretion,
Yeah.
but we thought it's important to touch base with you ahead of time to make sure we're understanding that discretion you gave us and what your intent was with,
Thank you.
with this project.
It's good.
It's great. And
Thank
that's
you.
why that decision was made. Good. Okay, now, advisory board reports. Bill?
Nothing.
Cara, you'll get some.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
awaiting
all
mine,
day,
right?
all day work
Yes,
session.
yeah.
Start looking at some of the, and then you can decide what you're interested in, and we'll have a conversation about all of that also during the all-day work session.
Great.
And then you can, yeah. Dan, what do you have?
The foundation didn't meet this month. Fire muster hasn't met this month. Trying to think, there's nothing really, no updates since our last meeting, with the exception of that email that I sent out to everyone that Thursday morning, not tomorrow morning, I'll be attending I-35 Solutions.
Good.
And in anticipation of likely getting assigned to that with Mary Sherry retiring as a result of my assignment to the MBTA and the significant crossover between those two committees.
Well, I think it's very important that there is continuity
Yes.
and sustainability of Burnsville, because one of the things that I've seen is that Burnsville, on these council rotations, doesn't get on a leadership role,
Right. Yeah,
because it's a revolving door,
yes. And
and that doesn't help us.
no, and to that point, I'll let you know my thoughts on it, because I do believe that it's not in the best interest of any council member necessarily to monopolize a position. I spent 4 years on MBTA and then said, okay, it's time for some other council member to get that experience. And I think Mr. Coughlin served 2 years. And then, of course, it was to Councilmember Nguyen, and that didn't work out so well schedule-wise, so I picked it up. I was happy to, but now that I have it, I want to stay put. I don't want a revolving door of people with MBTA, so I think I'm going to be on it for probably at least 3 years, if not more. And to Councilmember Schultz, just benefit is, most of our committee assignments are pretty standalone in nature, except for transportation. When you get on MBTA's board, to not be on the I-35 Solutions, for instance, creates a huge disconnect of two major transportation committees that talk a lot about the same corridor, I-35. And there's
Yeah.
so much overlap and so many synergies between those two that it's not a good idea to split it up. And I know Councilmember Gustafson called me and asked me if you know, he said he was very interested in getting on I-35. As an old prior transportation person, it's up in his ballywick and he enjoys it. He's good at it. But the reality is, I'm already established in MBTA. I'm certainly not going to jump off after 6 months. And so I just said, you know, I-35 is something that I really need. It's in the best interest of the city and the council. I need to be represented on that. And so we haven't done these official assignments, and that's
No,
why I
but
sent that
agree.
email out.
So, but
is
you need to be at that meeting tomorrow?
Yeah.
Especially
It's
with right
Thursday,
now,
sorry.
it's, pardon
I
me?
fooled you. It's Thursday, not
Oh.
tomorrow. I thought it was Wednesday today when I was typing that email.
Well, the thing is, there's a lot of discussion going on,
Yes.
especially with CTIB and also with the transit and transportation
Sure.
pieces. Okay.
And I
Good.
put it on my calendar for Thursday and then said tomorrow, because I have my one-on-one with you is overlapping, so we got to move that.
Okay. All right.
That was it. Thank you.
Okay. Convention and Visitors Bureau, we transitioned in our leadership during our December meeting. Warren did a wonderful job of leading us, and we are now looking to our 30th anniversary, and all of you have received the save the date for February 10th, 8th. You have saved the date. So on your calendar, and that went well. Our properties, our hotels are doing well. They continue to have higher average daily rate, even though we have some properties that keep pulling the average daily rate down. There's a lot more movement in the price point of our four-star to compensate for the other ones. So that continues to do well. So financially, it's doing well. The council approved the strategic plan. We're moving forward with that. And we have two new members on the board, Jeff LaFavor and Melissa Miller from the shopping center. So we have two new board members. So it's a very young board in terms of number of years served, but really good. So I now chair, and then Susie Orhus from UTC is vice chair, and Nathan Kramer is treasurer. So that's where we are, and it's the 30th anniversary of the Convention and Visitors Bureau, and it is Experience Burnsville. It's February 9th. Thank you, Michelle. And then I had my Regional Council of Mayors meeting on Monday. Again, a lot of great discussion around talent, housing, and jobs. And the challenge between all of that, when people come in, especially millennials, where do they want to live? And then the jobs, and where are those jobs? So, and transit is the other portion about it. So, a lot of great discussion around that. And then Tom Fisher, who is a professor at the Design Center at the university, also talked about the different housing types that we can look at, because in our area, we only look at rental and single family. We don't have a lot of different configurations about how multiplexes or duplexes or any of those kinds of homes, and what would that look like? And so he gave some design elements around all of that. So it was very interesting, and Tom does a nice job. So that's what went on at the Regional Council of Mayors. And we are now starting it with the International Festival, and we're going to be meeting next week and starting the planning for July. And it will be the 10th anniversary of the International Festival, and also the 10th anniversary of I Love Burnsville. So it's going to be a busy and fun year. So that's all I have. Anything else? Staff? Heather?
No.
Michelle? Bill?
As long as Dan was talking about, I do want to reinforce that Dan is right, that it's usually for a couple of these, and I'm in part directing it towards you, that we serve some other boards for a while, and then we move into some other boards that take a little more experience, and I waited my time to do the MBTA and some of the other ones as well, so it's not an inside baseball thing, it's just sort of how we've done it.
Yeah.
I remember I started, with some other boards that,
Yeah, and I think we put ourselves at a disadvantage because we don't earn credibility, because we come in, if it only meets once a month, it's 12 meetings. So you don't earn credibility to get at a leadership position, to have a bigger voice for Burnsville. And I think we need to take a look at that. That was done because then that only benefits the individual and not the organization that we say that we're going to go in and try and help and make a difference. So we can have that discussion at our all-day work session. The thing is, I want to make sure that Burnsville has a bigger voice on all of these boards. So, all right, if there's nothing else, we stand adjourned by acclamation. Thank you.